on air. Good morning, everyone. Let's please rise for the silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting to order. I think we begin with minutes of March 22nd and March 8th. Is everybody here for both of those meetings?
Wasn't here last week.
So you wouldn't have been here for which?
Oh, there's two. 30th or?
Here, I'll look.
I'll abstain from both of them. There you go.
Okay, yeah, just trying to be polite,
Yep.
professional to you. You're welcome, sir. All right, is there a motion to approve one or both?
Motion to approve the minutes of March 8th and 22nd.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any other comments, corrections? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Anybody
Aye.
abstain?
Aye.
Thank you, Charlie. All right. Next, Commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin?
I'd just like to say good morning to everyone and thank all of those that reached out to me on my recent surgery on my hip. And had my doctor's report yesterday, and he said everything was healing just outstanding, and I can resume my normal duties. So just wanted to thank all of the people that have reached out to me with prayers and thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kiefer?
Just one thing, I have received a request over the weekend from the town of Boonesboro, and I placed a copy on every commissioner's desk, or John was able to do that for me. They are applying for, I believe it's a federal earmark, so it's a federal grant for their lead pipe remediation with Boonesboro's ongoing water system upgrade. And they are asking for a letter of support from us that would go to our two federal senators and congressmen in support of this earmark. No budgetary, no monetary requests from us, just our show of support. So Stu Mullendore, who chairs the town's Municipal Utilities Commission, even drafted a letter for us to make it easy for us since it is due so soon. So I'd like to see if we can have a motion to support this letter.
Yeah, or do you need a motion or consensus, which is more appropriate? Either way is okay with me.
Motion to support it.
Second.
Second, any, Kirk, will you review that, make any adjustments or corrections if it doesn't?
Sure.
Anything that should be added? With that being said, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thank you, Commissioner Kiefer. Anything else?
that's all.
All right, Commissioner Burkett.
Since I missed last week, I have a couple things I'd like to bring up or mention. Good morning first to everyone in the gallery and those joining us on live feed. Last week, my wife and I enjoyed our 25th anniversary in Tennessee. And but just a quick comment, I did tune in at least for a portion of last week's meeting. I got chastised for that, but was glad to see that the budget for the Commission on Aging was passed last week. I certainly, had I been here, would have agreed to that. And then just a couple other short comments. This month is Child Abuse Awareness Month, and so there'll be several events taking place throughout our community, and so if you're able, go out and support those events. And then thank you to Skip for the invitation for me and my wife to visit the Williamsport Volunteer Fire Company banquet, and so thank you. It was a very nice event, so thank you to all those who serve Williamsport and all of our communities of Washington County. As I said many, many times, public safety is government's #1 priority, and so we all on this board have appreciated that. And then last week I received an inquiry from an employee, and he mentioned in his email that he'll be eligible for retirement in a couple years. And as a result of that email, I sent an email to Kelsey and received a response from her. Currently, retirees are able to elect to keep their insurance at a rate of a 50-50 split. This gentleman informed me that because of that, he would not be able to retire as soon as he would like because of the extra cost this would, or burden it would put on him. So when I talked to Kelsey, she said that in order to do a 90-10 split, it would increase our costs by $283,000. And so I think that is very minimal. If we would choose, we could cover it at 100%. It's not what I'm proposing, but it would cost us $353,000. And so I am, in light of that information, I'm making the motion that we change our policy on retirement benefits to reflect we will start covering retiree insurance benefits at a rate of 90-10 until the age of 65, taking effect July 1st, 2022. We could even offer maybe some sort of step program for based on years of service or something like the like.
That was a motion. Is there a second anywhere? Hearing none?
I think this is something that is worthy of consideration, more discussion, maybe when we come to our budget portion, if that's possible.
Yeah, if there's not a second, then we can come back. Is there a second? Hearing no second?
Let me second
Yeah,
it.
yeah, okay, for
Let
discussion.
me second it
So
here.
second. Now we have discussion.
I'd like this to be brought back up during our budget discussion if we could. I may have concern about if we don't tie a length of service into this. I do think length of service is important. I know this is something similar to what the Board of Education does, so, you know, it's not unheard of in local government. But a 90-10 split for someone who may have 5 years of employment with the county doesn't sound fair to me.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree, but this something should be put on a scheduled agenda, because I think a year or two ago, we had 40 or 50 some people get into the drop program. So I'd like to see the long-term cost with the number of people age 64.
That was-
Yeah, this is probably what we need. I understand, because I brought this up to previous HR directors and, on this, and, you know, people get it when they turn 64, but we need more complete, accurate information on the long-term cost. So overall, it's a good idea.
That was based
but-
on
but I
50
would-
currently enrolled.
Yeah, I would like to have it maybe more of an agenda item for a lot of details and be more prepared to discuss it.
I think we all stand behind our retired people wanting to retire. I don't think there's any dispute on that at all.
Yeah, it's not.
Then
I
it should
just-
be an easy vote.
I should, well, not if you
I
don't
wanna
have
see
the
the- I
facts in
wanna
front
see
of
the-
you. I want to
Right
hear
here's-
from,
Right here's the email.
Yeah, but I want to
you're-
see a presentation by it, not
yeah,
just.
yeah,
an
you're
email. This-
jumping in without an agenda again, without a discussion, without an ARF. I want to hear from Kelsey directly. I want to hear from staff. And like I said, I think we're all in agreement.
And Wayne's.
That we'd like to explore it.
suggestion is appropriate, so.
Can we ask Kelsey what talking points we might need to consider?
Based on what premiums are being paid today. So if our premiums would change because of cost, that will change overall costs in the future. Another thing that needs to be considered, which may or may not change costs, but this gets paid out of our OPEB plan.
Okay.
Retirement health insurance is reimbursed through the OPEB plan, so it will have an effect on that funding.
Okay,
So there are more things to consider yet.
all right, I have a first and a second.
I would ask why you didn't share that information with me. I mean, this seems to me like no matter what the cost is, we'll save ultimately when people retire and we hire new people just on the payroll.
I'm going to call the discussion in for a vote with any other comments from the commissioners, because this is something of importance. It should be a scheduled agenda item with a full presentation. I think everybody agrees with that. No one's against it from what I'm hearing, but it should be on the agenda and be a full discussion. I have a first and a second.
May I continue
Yes, we
discussion
shall
for
have
just a second?
discussion.
Kelsey, a timeline next week as we continue our budget discussions. Do we meet next week?
Yes.
Okay. Would that give you enough time to prepare more detail? That way we can make a consideration for this budget cycle.
Yeah, and I think that's a appropriate course of action. All right,
Obviously, we could add it as an agenda item if that's what the board wants to do.
Okay, so would you want to withdraw your motion so we have it on the agenda for full discussion next week? Or do we want to take a vote and say no or yes?
Yeah, I would like to hear a vote, but just say that it's my understanding that this issue has been brought up many times in the past, and it's just not been addressed. And so I think we should address it.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? No? 4-1, thank you. It'll be on the agenda next week, if possible. Thank you very much. But I would strongly recommend items this important always be put on our agenda and get more support. I think you had support, but I want to see a more formal presentation of it, and it has been brought up in the past, but it's never been brought for a formal discussion. So thank you for bringing the issue. Wayne, thank you for your suggestion. Now we move on. Commissioner Burkett, any further comments?
No further comments.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Wagner?
I mean,
Morning.
Just before we move off of this issue, certainly the commissioners can give direction as to what they want the plan and benefits to be. I've not discussed this proposal with Benefits Council. I am not sure what, if anything, would need to be done to amend our plan. So with that being said, certainly you can give us direction, but this may be more than a one-step process.
Thanks.
We'll make every effort to get as much information
Sure.
as we can for this.
I would say I'm not going to let this issue drop. So many times on this board, I hear about things and then only to hear crickets for months afterwards. This is an issue that needs
If you wanted
addressed.
this to be on an agenda item, I'm sure the county administrator and the rest of us would have agreed. Sometimes
that'll be
bringing
next
us
week?
in commissioner comments is sort of a bushwhack. I'm going to use that word. We've all agreed with you to put it on the agenda.
Okay.
So I don't know, see what your argument is. You just
I'm
heard from
making no
lead counsel
argument.
that this was never been a formal request. So hearing no more comments, Commissioner Burkett, do you have any other thing to say?
No.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Wagner.
You finished, Kirk?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. I'm trying to get out in the community, just give you some idea what's been going on out there. Potomac Valley had their Easter bunny breakfast the other day. It was actually pretty fun. A lot of people there. They do a good job down there. Went to the kickoff of the Washington County Girls Softball League, which is held up at Kemps Mill Park. Beautiful park if nobody's been there. And it was an honor. It was a kickoff in honor of Dwayne Bolus, who had 20-some years there. And it's a well-run organization. State of the Chamber was last week. MML, Maryland Municipal League, was held last week. And I forget some of those details. If Jeff was there, he could tell you some more of that. But it was good to see all the mayors, see a lot of council people. It was pretty crowded. There's probably 75 people there. And a big one was the third anniversary of the Vietnam Monument on Walnut Street, and also Vietnam Veterans Day. Had a pretty good turnout, a little windy, but good pictures, good speeches. It's good to see, we're losing our veterans. I might be one of the youngest people there. And so it's sort of sad to see that. I guess we're hoping that some more younger veterans step up and start carrying that ball a little bit. And I wanted to thank purchasing for their pea luncheon. I didn't even know what pea luncheon was till I got there, then they explained it all to me. So everything started with a pea. I couldn't find a glitch anywhere. So anyway, that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. I too attended the purchasing luncheon. Thank you to that department for all that they do. I also attended the MML meeting at Keedysville and Boonesboro. Mayor of Keedysville, Ken Lord, recognized two retiring Barry Levy and Rick Bishop for their years of service to the town.
That's what it was,
I also attended the Vietnam Veterans Ceremony there at Walnut Street. The monument is beautiful. And I too attended the Kemps Mill softball opening, which I do every year, and they did honor Dwayne Bolus, a 22-year volunteer up there who put in countless hours from his family to be up there weekdays, mowing grass, fixing up the facility other than game day. One of the most important things I saw that day was his wife was there to accept some recognition from everyone, and his daughter has now agreed to take on one of the leadership sponsors positions in that softball league. So the tradition of Dwayne's family continues through his daughter. That completes my report. Next up, we'll have staff comments. Linda Spence, I have you listed as a participant. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Good morning, everyone. Linda Spence, Business Specialist for the Department of Business Development. I'm here this morning to introduce you to Michael Ginevro. He is the new plant manager for Parker Plastics. Parker Plastics has been rooted in our region since 2006. They make plastic bottles, and I am going to let Mike take it away.
Good morning. I'm Michael Ginevro. Been with Parker Plastics for about 8 months now. I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania. I've been all over the country. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I've been in Hagerstown for roughly 3 years, and this facility that we have is right off of 105 Enterprise Lane, and off the Western Maryland Parkway. We're near the Coca-Cola, the Manpower facility. Right after that, we're up in on the hill there. So we have roughly about 185,000 square foot facility. We have 13 machines. We started back in 2005 when the groundbreaking took place. We started with 3 machines, so right now we have 13 machines in total. And we have 2 decorating offline silk screen processing out there, heat transfer labeling, and pressure sensitive labeling. So our primary products, one of our big claim to fame is the little honey bear. I brought you guys some samples to take home.
Are they filled?
Yeah, they're filled.
When we visited, years ago, when we visited, ours weren't filled.
Pass them out. And then we also do the 3, 4, and 5 gallon water refill bottles for your coolers. We do sauce bottles, and honey is a big thing for us. Mount Olive pickles jars. So we run bottle sizes anywhere from 6 to 5 gallon, 6 ounce to 5 gallon. We ship primarily on the East Coast here, all the way from Maine down to Florida, and we head towards the Midwest a little bit. We have 165 employees currently at the plant. When I came there, we had roughly 80 employees, so we've doubled our workforce since I've been there. Our customers are, like I said, Mount Olive Pickles, Gamber Container, Dutch Gold Honey, Vita Food Products, Golding Farms Food, and Shelton House. Those are mostly food people that make sauces and that. And then we do a lot of water bottles. We do them for Blue Triton, which fills for Poland Springs, Pure Life, Deer Park. We have Primo, Culligan, and then Berkeley Club beverages that we do here locally. From an employment standpoint, there's 6 salary people at the plant. We have 160 hourly associates. We do use temps. About 20% of our workforce is temporary, and they get their hours and we bring them on full time. We run a 24-hour operation 7 days a week. Our shifts are, we have 2 12-hour shifts that run from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then we have 8-hour shifts that run Monday through Friday, first, second, and third shifts. You know, one of the big things that's really helped me here has been the chamber through the communications. You know, one of the things about Parker Plastics, we've been here 15 years, and a lot of people didn't know who we were. So we want to be part of the community. We want people to know about Parker Plastics. We as a company need to understand what programs are out here available for our industry to help us get through this time period that we've been going through for the last 2 years with COVID. And we need to develop a network, you know, to help network. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we can interchange best practices to help each other out as companies and try to survive and keep our business here in Hagerstown. You know, like I said, you know, COVID has really impacted us. I mean, when I started there, we had 80 employees, and trying to find employees was extremely difficult. We used the temp agencies, and we struggled trying to find good employees. Our wages, we had to increase our wages to be competitive in the area. And, the chamber was a big contributor to help me do some things. So we did a job fair back in October. Paul Fry and his team really helped me find some people to help me do this. We had a 2-day job fair back in October. We had 38 people that went to the job fair. We had it at our plant. We kind of set it up like, hey, if I was looking for a job, what would I want to feel and see when I went to a job fair? So we made it very personal, that we had a greeter meet the employee, bring them in a plant, help them fill out their applications, give them the interview process, showed them what we did, and then we gave them like a little gift package. I gave them a personal tour through the plant and walked them to the car, and we told them then and there we were going to hire them. So out of the 38 people that we did in 2 days, we hired 26 of those people, and currently I still have 23 of those 26 people that we hired. So it was very successful for us. But just to name a few organizations that the Chamber helped me to kind of network, Community Action was a huge a resource for me because I have a lot of people that don't have vehicles. So we worked with Community Action. They provide transportation now to and from my plant, where they used to drop them off about a quarter mile from the plant. So that's been a big success for us to help us get our employees to work. Transportation is a big issue in the Hagerstown area for my employees. Hagerstown Community College, big thing is working with my team, develop the leadership skills. So they've been a big part of my team building to give my managers the tools they need to manage and people, because it's a lot different today with the people than what it was 10 years ago. So Hub Label helped me connect, which I got through the chamber to connect with Dave Rosario of Maryland World Class Consortiums for lean management to work in the plant, that we're working on lean. And in the Washington County Department, working with Linda here. She's helped me get in touch with RMI Energy because we're looking to put some new equipment in and see what kind of rebates I can get for energy, et cetera, like that. So they're going to be coming in doing a survey in the plant, matter of fact, tomorrow. And then WDVM VM for advertising. We did advertising for our job fair, and we kind of looked at what was our best way. We kind of tracked it with social media, radio, TV, and all that, and Facebook and TV were our #1 ways of communicating to get people to come to our job fair, matter of fact. And then Western Maryland Consortium, I can't thank them enough for all the grants that they have provided us through training and that to help our plant grow and get the required training that we need. That's a lot of money is spent for training, and it's one of the things that companies really struggle with is getting, it's expensive to bring trainers in and support that. And when you get these grants and know what grants are out there, which there's a lot of grants that are available to us that I don't think a lot of people know in the industry, that we have to get that word out to help our companies so they can stay around. So I've worked in a lot of states. I've been all over the place. I'll have to really commend Hagerstown. They have a very good chamber. They have very good Washington County. I mean, everybody has been very, very receptive to me and to help me get the context, to help me, run this business here for Mr. Parker. We have 4 plants, one in Wisconsin, one in Vegas, and one in Oklahoma, and in Maryland is his biggest facility. So, and Mr. Parker is going to be here today visiting me to see how things are going. So, but that's Parker Plastics in a nutshell. And any questions?
Michael, you spoke at the State of the Chamber, didn't you?
Yes, I did, sir.
Yeah, and it's really encouraging that you keep expanding engagement in the community, and I thank you for that. Yeah. And one curious question: through all this, have you had any trouble getting materials?
No, we've had some things, but nothing major to stop us. Right. They've done a good job planning and setting backups in place. One other thing I do want to comment, excuse me. We do a lot with Wells House and Lasting Change and Reach. We hire a lot of those employees, also Goodwill. We've done a lot with them. We've brought a lot of those employees that need a second chance, and we work with them to try to get them gainfully employed and get their lives back on track. So we spend a lot of time with those organizations also. I wanted to speak to that.
Michael, thanks for what you and Parker Plastics do. It really tickles me that this iconic bear is made here in Washington County.
Yes.
That's awesome. Just as an aside, my great-grandfather from Boonesboro, Marshall Dival, he raised honeybees. What's that called? Apiary or apiary? Okay. He was an apiarist. And I saw recently one of his jars that my grandmother has. It's not a bear shape, but this is pretty cool. I'm also glad to hear some of the clients that you have are also local, that supply chain. That helps when your suppliers are local. I was just speaking to a gentleman yesterday about that, and that the one that it sounded familiar to me, Berkeley Club Beverage, across the state lines, but I'm familiar with them. And, you know, our business development department does a great job. It would be nice if we could help get you to supply other local.
Well, that's
Even
the big
more.
thing is that, you know, we got to get our name out there. So I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. The way freight costs are now today and that, I mean, there's a lot of advantages to do things locally.
Absolutely. A lot of supply chain efficiencies.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner, any other questions?
Yeah, I would just like to say, I'm familiar with this bottle, but I'm familiar with it empty because I had a cleaning business for 25 years, and I used to clean out there.
Okay.
That probably would have been 10, 12 years ago or so. But it was always neat to go in there and see them, especially the big blue water containers that they would just puff up with air. And it's an interesting program. The other thing that kind of stuck out to me is that you say that you are helping people that may not be able to get a job in other ways, like Goodwill and stuff like that. As a father of a son who deals with some issues, we are having a heck of a time finding employment for him. We cannot find anybody that would be willing to stand with him for a day or two and just teach him the repetitive job. And so maybe I can reach out to you and see. But good job. This is the kind of business we need in Hagerstown and Washington County. We need manufacturing type jobs. So.
All right, any other questions? If not, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next one, staff comments. I have Mark Bradshaw, Davina, please come forward and introduce yourself and the subject.
Do you have a card?
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Davina Yutzi, Deputy Director of Water Quality, and I'm joined by Mark Bradshaw, Director of Division of Environmental Management. What was distributed to you, there's 15 analysis on there that we are here to request a consensus to include into the public rate hearings that's upcoming. It became necessary because in March, we awarded new bidding for a contract, and the cost for our contracted services has raised. All we need is a consensus to take it to rate hearings to be included.
I'm sorry, I had a little trouble hearing some of it. Is your mic on? I guess it is, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's what you have in front of you. There's 15 analysis out of what our current laboratory we contract out. Those rates were increased. So we're here to ask if we can have modified rates included into the upcoming public rate hearing.
I don't, where was that? Because I'm not seeing that. The 15?
The forms on the behind the actual rates are the forms that are included to what the current costs are and what the adjusted rates are.
Sorry.
So this has nothing to do with the percent rate increase?
No, it just has to do with laboratory fees.
And most of these fees are associated with municipalities that bring samples in to have tested for wastewater and drinking water requirements. The residents' fees are not the 15 in here. I think you said there.
I think one of them is occasionally requested by a citizen. The rest are used by municipalities and also our own plants.
And these are what we have to pay the lab, so we do not have any markups or increases on here. This is just direct expenses that we have to pay. And like Davina said, we just want a consensus to include them in the rate hearing that's coming up later this month.
Well, I think they should be included, so.
I'm fine with it. I just wonder, you say we had one citizen, I guess, in the last fiscal year come in to have their water
We
tested?
have one analysis that's being adjusted that is sometime requested by citizens in the county. The rest are municipalities.
I wonder, not that it would generate a great deal of revenue, but I wonder if maybe we can advertise that a little more, let people know that they can have their water tested here locally, out of curiosity, not to mandate anything with their well or septic, of course,
Right.
just to.
We do a lot of private well testing, especially for new wells, new constructions, or refinancings. The one is fluoride, and usually that's if someone is on a public system or a private well needs to know what the fluoride for their formula for their infants.
Is there consensus to agree to that?
Yes.
See 5 nods. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Is there any other staff in the audience? If not, we'll start here. Mr. Downey, anything from legal?
Nothing this morning, thank you.
County Administrator?
Thank you, President Klein. Good morning, Commissioners. I just have one. We were contacted by Addie Nardi from the Boys and Girls Club. You may recall she was here a few weeks ago to talk to the commissioners and brief them on the new clubhouse replacement project they're working on. They're also submitting, similar to the town of Boonesboro, they're submitting an application for community project funding. So they're seeking federal funding, and they've asked the commissioners for a letter of support for their clubhouse replacement project and their application for community project funding. So I ask the commissioners to.
Want to vote or consensus again?
I'll motion to support.
Second.
First, second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have that for you to sign, Mr. President.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, anyone else? Hearing none, we'll go to citizens' participation. Anyone in the front row? Second row? Third row? And those guys in the back row. Seeing none come forward, we'll move on to agriculture, facts of farming. Please come forward, introduce yourself and the matter. Selves.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy Tuesday.
Presents today.
Yeah, I do have presents. I'll have presents every time with Faces of
I remember
Farming.
you used to bring milk and ice cream to us.
Oh, bacon.
Hold tight for
eggs,
June. June is coming. That's
Yes,
Dairy
indeed.
Month.
Thank you very much.
bacon,
Good morning.
eggs.
Leslie
Morning,
Hart,
Leslie.
Washington County Department of Business Development. I'm here this morning to present the Faces of Farming Marketing and Advertising Campaign. Faces of Farming is critical. Farming is critical to our community, and it generates $153 million in market value sales. It is the largest single economic driver for Washington County. I'm proud to be part of that agricultural community, and Faces of Farming is a campaign that you'll see every single month from me. This month in particular, we're focused on our artisan beverages. I have Upper Stem featured, and I have Pathfinder Farm Distillery. What you have in front of you is a small sachet. It is filled with Chinook hops, lemongrass, lemon peel, and calendula. So you smell it. That's the magic that makes beer. It's the hops. It's the really heavy scent, but there's some other really pleasant scents in there. If you're a beer connoisseur, the scents and the fragrances that are associated with artisan beer are very important to a brewmaster. So I thought I'd share that with you this morning. I also just want to let you know that the artisan beverage industry is taking off incredibly well in our community. I anticipate I'll have 11 breweries within the next 2 years. I have 3 existing, and I have that many more in the pipeline of coming of new businesses. Very exciting time for Washington County agriculture. So if it's all right with you, I'll ask our Public Relations Department to roll that beautiful bean footage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're a Maryland designated farm brewery, which means we also have to produce some product on the premise that we put in our beer. And for us, that's mostly hops. We've got about a half-acre hop field, and we also do some herbs and some spices. We due to some of the laws here in Washington County, we ended up going that way, and it's worked out really well for us. Probably one of the largest producers of ag products in the state. Yeah, there's a lot of resources here in the county. There's several places that you can go and a lot of people you can talk to, and they will give you a lot of advice, and they've all been, all the people that I talk to have been farmers in the past, and they know a lot about the industry. And well, besides brewing, which Washington County recognizes as an agricultural product, and that's one of the reasons we came here as well. There are plenty of other opportunities if you're interested in any kind of cattle production. There's a large dairy aspect here in Washington County. Well, we opened right when COVID started, April of 2020. So our first couple months of business were all curbside delivery. And a farm brewery, we had always wanted to have a large outdoor area, which we do have, and that really helped when those restrictions were lifted and we could have people outside, and we got a real good response from the community about having that available. We're looking to go more to some distribution and try to get some business that way out to local restaurants and other locations, and that's our future.
Here at Pathfinder Farm, we grow a heritage variety of red corn, and we grow it right here on our farm. We mash, ferment, and distill it right here at the farm. We use local ingredients when they make the best kind of product for our flavored moonshines, and we also work with other local businesses to make our products. Like, we get our apples from Ivy Hill Farm up in Smithsburg. Well, I know that Washington County, the largest economic driver is agriculture. And there's already an established network of farmers, and I was glad to join in with that. I see the future of agriculture in Washington County really being agritourism, because there's so many wonderful, beautiful places here in Washington County. And we should have visitors come and tour the C&O Canal, Antietam Battlefield, and give them an experience out on the farm somewhere.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Leslie. Just to be clear, if I dump this in my water, don't turn the beer, right?
Please don't. Please don't. Just smell it.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda, Resolution Hitachi Rail. Jonathan, please introduce yourself and the topic.
Morning, Commissioners and staff. Jonathan Horowitz, the Department of Business Development. I'm here today to recommend a motion to move to approve the resolution for the endorsement of the State of Maryland's $1.6 million Maryland Economic Development Assistance Authority Fund, better known as MEDAF, loan to provide a matching county conditional loan in the amount of $1.2 million. The State of Maryland's Department of Commerce, under the Maryland's Economic Development Assistance Authority, has agreed to conditionally loan Hitachi Rail USA the amount of $1.6 million from the MEDAF program. The MEDAF loan proceeds will be used by Hitachi Rail USA to establish its new facility as a central hub for its American business. The factory will develop a skilled new workforce, create a broad local supply chain, and bring extensive economic value to the region. Hitachi Rail USA announced that its Washington County location will be its state-of-the-art $70 million manufactory that will build the new fleet of 8,000 series rail cars for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, the Metro. The facility will employ up to 460 people locally, sustain 1,300 jobs in the region, and will see 80% of its construction value spent in the Quad State region, including the District of Columbia. In accordance with the Maryland Code Economic Development Article, Section 5-319D, the county is required to endorse the making of the MEDAF loan for the project and approve a required local match. To complement the state of Maryland's offer of assistance, we are asking the county to contribute $1.2 million toward the project in the form of a conditional loan as the required loan match. The fiscal impact of this motion will draw upon the hotel rental tax fund, and we have concurrences from our county attorney and the county administrator. I'd ask for that
Is there an
motion.
employment condition to these loans?
Yeah, there are employment thresholds that need to be met through. The conditional loans will not be forgiven unless all thresholds are met.
What's the number?
I don't know the exact number. When the proposals are made, the number of 460 was used on all proposals.
So if they don't come anywhere near 400, does that money claw back from that loan? How's that work?
It's a loan to start with, so the loan would not be conditionally dismissed unless all parameters are met.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments, motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a first and a second. Any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next, public hearing.
Legislative, no oath.
Pardon me?
Legislative, no.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a public hearing concerning proposed animal control ordinance. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will have staff first introduce the matter, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to testify. After everyone who wishes to speak has done so, the hearing will close. There, you're already up there.
I'm already ready to go.
The commissioners may then discuss the issue and take any action that they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Hi, my name is Colin Berry. I am the Executive Director at the Humane Society of Washington County. I am standing in for our Field Service Director, Crystal Mowry, today, who is sick. She sends her apologies, but thank you for allowing me to speak in her place. We are proposing a revision to the Animal Control Ordinance, which includes defining cat, which is pretty basic, but also changes the current 5-day stray hold down to 2 days. It reduces it to 3 days, which matches the Maryland state law. The current 5-day hold stray period for felines is really detrimental to the overall health of the cats in our care. The longer a cat is actually in the shelter, the greater the risk of illness, which is caused by stress. And there have been studies that have shown that the probability of developing upper respiratory infection is significantly higher on day 5 than on day 3. And unfortunately, once a cat's ill, that can require weeks and sometimes even months in our care, which extends cost, of course. The current 5-day hold is also detrimental to the live release rate of felines in our care, and we've been working so hard to increase that rate over the years. And when a cat is on a 5-day stray hold, we quickly run out of room, at the shelter, especially in the spring and the summer months, for other stray animals who may be coming in the door and who are in need of help. So last year in 2021, of the 1,900 cats who came into our care as strays, only 2.8% of them were reclaimed by an owner in that 5-day period. Of the 8,566 cats who came to us as strays over the past 5 years, only 2% were reclaimed. So the number is very low. We make every effort to reunite pets with their families. We post on social media, in Herald Mail, we scan for microchips. We have a lost and found stray page. We compare all of those to the lost reports that are filed at the shelter too. So reducing the current 5-day stray hold to 3 will expedite getting cats into our adoption floor and into new homes, and that makes room for other cats in need. And without the space, we could be forced to make some really difficult decisions, life and death decisions, quite honestly, at certain times of the year. We obviously want to avoid that. We want our population to remain healthy. So for those reasons, we are respectfully requesting for you to approve the revision today.
Colin, I have 2 questions, and I support your request. Just wondering, by reducing the stray hold from 5-day to 3-day, when you say stray, is there a possibility that one of those cats could be someone's pet and 3 days just hasn't given them enough time to reach out to the Humane Society to see if you found their pet?
There's always the possibility, but I will tell you a couple of things. One, if a cat comes to us, obviously, who's microchipped, and we make every effort to locate that owner, we would probably give them an extra day or 2 just to get there or return our phone call once we've reached out to them. Also, cats with collars and tags, that always helps. We would definitely make some exceptions in those. It's just that the majority of the animals, the cats who come to us, don't have either of those things.
I have one more question, but maybe this isn't the right time.
Go ahead. I want to go to public comment, but you can proceed. We're all
Just,
right.
what necessitated the need to define cat? And I think it makes sense in an animal control ordinance, I suppose, but why did that come about? Was there a scenario that...
Honestly, I think that is more of a Kirk question. It hasn't been defined in the past, and I think if we're now making a change, it makes sense to go ahead and define cat.
I thought it was cleaner in providing for the impoundment period. Obviously, there's a definition of dog, there's not a definition of cat, and since this change applies only to cat and no other animals, we needed some way to narrowly focus the change towards cats.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll come back to Commissioner comments. First, I want to open up the public hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to testify from the audience, please come forward and give your name and address and tell us what you would like to know. Is there anyone in the audience for public comment? Seeing none, we'll return to commissioner comments or questions. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
I just have a question. On your percent numbers, you said you want to get from 5 days to 3 days, and you said currently I think there's about 2% of the cats are actually
Reclaimed.
Yeah, so
It's typically in the first few days.
okay. That was my question.
Yeah.
So
Usually if people are really out looking for their cats, they are urgently, looking for their cat, and they come right away or post on a number of different sites. It should not impact it.
that owner calling you usually occurs within the first 3 days.
Absolutely.
Colin, slipped my mind, the name of the program that releases, like neuter or spay and release?
Trap, neuter, release.
Trap, neuter, release. How does this tie in with that? You don't keep them that long on that, do you?
That program is specifically designed to bring them in and return them within about a 24-hour period as unowned.
Commissioners, any other questions? Hearing none, the public hearing is now concluded. Commissioners, any further comments? You can take action or not?
I'm okay with it if everybody else is, just so, yeah.
Second.
Yeah, second. That was a motion. Sort of a roundabout motion, but yeah.
Is there a second?
Second, I'm
No,
sorry.
Thank you, Wayne. Have first and a second. Any other comments? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Senator Moss funding allocations. Director Hayes, please come forward, introduce yourself and the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services. We're here to seek a motion to approve the annual distribution of the Senator Amos money that comes to us from the state of Maryland. The recommended motion is moved to accept the recommendation of the Director of Emergency Services, authorizing the Division of Emergency Services to make notification of the grant award from the FY22 Senator William H. Amos Fire Rescue and Ambulance Fund subsidy as outlined in the attached document. The total fiscal year 2022 funding received by the county is $334,904. The report in brief, the state of Maryland distributes an annual payment to each county for the support of local fire and rescue operations. The county in turn makes notification of the funding to the eligible volunteer fire and rescue corporations. Financial accountability and reporting are handled within the Division of Emergency Services and the Office of the Budget and Finance, with county filing a financial report with the state on an annual basis. The Senator William H. Amos Fire Rescue Ambulance Fund is authorized within the Public Safety Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. The Maryland Emergency Management Agency is the responsible monitor of the program. Fiscal impact would be specifically to the volunteer fire and rescue companies, and the loss of funding will result in a reduction of capital, equipment funding, and expenditures that are available to the independent fire and EMS companies. Concurrences, Director Office Budget Finance, Director of Emergency Services, and we do not list any alternatives. And then the distribution matrix is a simple breakdown. Each volunteer fire and rescue company would get an annual distribution of $12,880.75. The 6 city volunteer corporations allocations all have historically gone to the city of Hagerstown Fire Department. That total will be $77,289. And each of the EMS companies will get the same distribution. Again, the total distribution is $334,904.
Are you looking for, it says briefing, I know you look for any action from us
We need a
today.
motion. We need a motion to authorize the distribution according to the matrix. And
Motion to authorize.
Or a second?
Second.
And a second. Any questions, comments?
Just one question. It may have been a typo. The attachment says a fiscal year 2020 distribution matrix. Is that?
it is a typo.
Okay. So it is 2020.
Reused an old one and forgot to change the year at the top.
Okay.
First and a second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? 5-0. Thank you very much. EMS staffing update, Director Hayes. I think you have Dale Fishak included. Please come forward, introduce yourselves.
I don't think I've ever seen you in a suit.
That happens once in a great while. Dale Fishak, President of Washington County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association.
And again, David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services. We're here to provide a briefing to the BOCC on the EMS staffing in Washington County and the challenges that the 8 independent corporations in the division are having with sustainability, specific to recruitment and retention of EMS providers, more specific to those that are certified at the paramedic level. So in 2009, a staffing model was endorsed by the commissioners that provided a preset EMS staffing subsidy that was dispersed annually to each volunteer EMS company in Washington County. In doing so, the intent was to help the EMS companies create equality in EMS provider salaries, benefits, and retirement plans among all 8 of the EMS companies. The amount of the current EMS subsidy is set at $2,026,520. The breakdown of the EMS staffing subsidy was drawn from the difference in net EMS billing balanced against the formulated cost of providing 24-hour EMS staffing coverage for each ambulance. The formula also took into consideration the number of ALS transport units a company was required to have in service and multiplied the subsidy accordingly. The
The original basis and formula has not been adjusted since the 2009 implementation. The discussion is as follows. Additional efforts were undertaken in the FY21 budget to help the volunteer EMS companies recruit and retain staff under the current system. The BOCC allocated an additional $1 million to cover cost of health insurance coverage for the volunteer corporation employees. This increased in the direct cash contribution for EMS staffing to just over $3 million, with the additional $1 million the EMS companies increased wages and standardized health insurance coverages and costs. In doing so, this allowed the EMS companies to place a stronger emphasis on standardizing wages. EMS staff continue to leave one county volunteer employer and accept positions at another county volunteer employer, even with the attempt at standardized wages. Unfortunately, the volunteer EMS staff continue to leave the volunteer corporation employers, searching for additional opportunities in career advancement and promotions. Many of these departures involve city or county employment opportunities to the east of our county, where EMS providers are employed by a government agency. Throughout the past 13 years, the 8 volunteer EMS companies and county government have taken multiple steps to maintain adequate EMS staffing under the volunteer corporation staffing model. In conversations and meetings, the volunteer EMS companies are realizing that recruitment and retaining EMS staffing, most specifically paramedics, has almost become untenable and unsustainable under the current system's design. Without responsible changes relating to staffing strategies, the possibility of significant collapse of the EMS system is a real possibility. In some instances, this has already occurred where paramedic staffing is concerned. Under the current EMS deployment model, significant challenges remain for those employees who desire promotional opportunity, changes in career direction, EMS versus fire, or finding a slower pace with call volumes. For volunteer corporations employees to accomplish this under the current system model, he or she must basically start over at another volunteer company, losing years of service, seniority, increases in earned vacation leave, and 401k retirements. It is difficult for volunteer corporation employees to establish solid retirement planning options given consideration of the challenges above. Essentially, the volunteer corporation must choose retirement planning, career advancement, or in some cases accept discord or job dissatisfaction, as he or she must start over as a new employee somewhere else to address most of these issues. The Division of Emergency Services works collaboratively with each volunteer EMS company in an effort to fill the voids in EMS staffing where or when possible. Each time DES covers a shortage in the EMS station, there is a secondary impact to the DES firefighter staffing within the volunteer fire stations. DES staff are dual-role providers and are utilized as such to the extent possible. This is not always a viable option due to other system impacts associated with relocating a DES dual-role provider to an EMS station. Whatever the action is taken moving forward, the decision must produce measurable change, improvement to the status and sustainability of EMS in Washington County. And we'll work through the slideshow that you have here, which will basically outline what the system looks like, highlight its challenges, and give you a brief look into the last 3 months of staffing shortages with the 8 EMS companies in the division as a whole. So the first slide, I want to preface this entire presentation to include the reading of the ARF, with all 8 EMS companies and the division are and have been doing everything possible to keep the EMS system alive and functioning. And this presentation is not a representation of failure of effort on the part of any of those agencies. It is just the failures and identifies the failures that are directly related to the limitations in current EMS system delivery systems design. Next slide. Try to go through a quick breakdown of EMS in Washington County. There are 8 independent volunteer EMS companies that provide EMS transport services, and each of those are required to have a specific number of ambulance staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For definitions, if you see EMT, it is a basic level of care provider, and if you see paramedic, obviously that is our advanced level of care provider that provides those critical life-saving interventions. If we go down through the listings here, you'll see Boonesboro, Clear Spring, Hancock, Sharpsburg, and Smithsburg, and Williamsport all are expected to have one 24-hour staffed ambulance with a paramedic and an EMT. The Halfway Volunteer Fire Company has one 24-hour ambulance staffed with an EMT and a paramedic. They also are to staff an additional 12-hour ambulance with one EMT and paramedic. And then Community Rescue Service, which is by far our largest EMS provider in the county, staffs 5 24-hour ambulances, each staffed with one EMT and paramedic, and one 12-hour ambulance staffed with an EMT and paramedic, in addition to one 24-hour paramedic EMS supervisor. You come down to the bottom of the page, you'll see the Division of Emergency Services provides the general oversight and deploys one ALS chase vehicle and 4 EMS fire supervisors who are also certified in advanced life support. They are located at the Sharpsburg Fire Station, the Leitersburg Fire Station, Clear Spring Fire Station, Hancock Fire Station, and Roarsville Fire Station. And you'll see the respective units and staffing levels assigned to each of those. Next slide. The next 3 slides will show December, January, and February, and I'm not going to go through these each specifically. You can read the information that you have, but you'll see that each station to some level is experiencing difficulty in managing or implementing sustainability in the paramedic level staffing. The good news is over the last couple months, most of the stations have been able to do away with the driver-only positions for the most part. We had a couple areas where stations were unstaffed for a period of time. The 2 stations that, at least according to these documents, that were struggling the hardest were Clear Spring EMS and Smithsburg EMS, and they're both aware of that. And again, this is not meant to call them out, it's just showing where our real problems are. Some stations are better positioned than others, and again, I don't think that's due to management, it is just due to call volume and opportunity. But as you go down this, you can see that almost consistently, most stations have had some type and some level of staffing problems. January, you will see this continue on, and you'll see there are some areas where we have had at least one station that was totally unstaffed. In the one instance, it was 12 hours out of one day. That means that station was out of service for that 12 hours, and another ambulance from somewhere else had to come. If you move across to February, and you need to come forward 2 slides, you'll see the same demographics here, and again, the same stations are struggling just about at the same level. Next slide. The next slide shows the Division of Emergency Services and the assets we talked about several slides before. And even with the new staffing that we have hired, we have had instances where we cannot staff a paramedic in some of the stations, the 5 stations that we've identified.
Dave, can I interrupt just for a second?
Yes, sir.
These are hours that there was no
Yes.
paramedic, so you could have no paramedic for 189 hours. Am I reading that correctly?
That's right.
Okay.
That's over a period of what time?
If you're referencing
month, a
any
year?
1 month, yeah. If you're looking at the
Yeah, I just picked
189.
one. Yeah, that's a month, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
February, it's the month of February, 189 hours. Now, I do want to preface, like with Smithsburg EMS, they've done a lot of work trying to hire paramedics as well as the other companies, and they were holding open full-time spots, and that they had a lot, if you look back in December and even before that, a lot of driver-only times. So our direction was, if you can't hire paramedics, but you can hire EMTs, at least fill your FTE slots so that you can get us a BLS ambulance on the street with 2 EMTs. We'll feed you the paramedic either from Community Rescue Service or the paramedic in Leitersburg. And that scenario actually happens at some of the other stations where they're putting 2 EMTs on an ambulance and we're feeding the paramedic either from another company or the closest DES asset.
Dave, if I could ask a question about that, since we're on the subject of Smithsburg EMS. They seem to have the highest time without staff.
Right.
I don't know how long ago it was. Time kind of got away, maybe in the last 2 years.
Yes.
We helped Smithsburg EMS out with their difficulties they were going through. Have we helped enough with that issue? Is that, are they still like suffering from those concerns 2 years ago? And I know they had some turnover for obvious reasons, but.
Just for the record, no, the audience is not up here to speak. I mean to be polite to you, but just to thank you for that.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
So I am going to defer that over to Dale, who is here. He also wears 3 hats. One of them is his primary job, but he is the chief, the appointed chief of Smithsburg EMS. So I'm going to ask him to comment in on that, if you will.
So it's not a financial issue. It's purely a staffing issue, which is part of the whole system that we're here to talk about today. It's not just Smithsburg EMS that it's having difficulty hiring individuals because the pool is so slim out there. What we did, I believe it was November timeframe, and don't hold me to that, but not too long ago, as David alluded to, we switched to putting our effort on hiring EMTs as opposed to the paramedics. So we were putting in a BLS ambulance in service as opposed to one with paramedic on for ALS service. So the hours you see reflect the time that there's no paramedic there. That does not mean, or in any of the other categories where it says BLS only, that there was not an ambulance in service. That just means that there was not a paramedic there. So, and I can speak intimately about Smithsburg, we're still providing a service. We're not providing it at the level that we would like to be able to with ALS, but we are putting a unit on the street. We are not having a unit that's not there and not able to respond.
Dale.
Hopefully that answered your question.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. What's the difference between an EMS and a paramedic?
So an EMT is your basic level of certification on an ambulance, and a paramedic provides advanced care. So, well, you alluded to that earlier. I don't know if you want to go more in depth.
No, so the one thing that I had spoken to with Smithsburg specifically is we asked them, if you can't hire paramedics, just as an example, if you need 4 EMTs and 4 paramedics to deliver 24-hour service, you have your 4 EMTs, but you can't find 4 paramedics, you've only got 1, hire the other 3 at EMTs, so you can at least give us a basic level ambulance. And there's a number of calls that are dispatched that ambulance by itself with no paramedic help can handle. So that is really the action that Smithsburg took, and it's been reasonably successful, at least in the interim till we get to someplace different at this point. And they are doing that, and the staffing stats here show that. And as the chief here said, you know, for the most part, you're seeing them staffed with at least 2 people on an ambulance. There's just one of those that's not a paramedic.
So that, I'm going to let you get on with your presentation. One more question. So Clear Spring dispatches with the BLS. Is there an ALS coming from another station required, or, I mean, you'd almost have to, right?
If it's only BLS, no, they can handle that call.
Okay.
If it requires a paramedic response with it, we would have, and they didn't have a paramedic.
Depending on the incident, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so, but it's a little unique in Clear Spring because we have one of our ALS chase units there.
I was just using that as an example.
Yeah, but that's a good one. I'm just saying, that's where a DES asset can backfill that almost immediately because they sit, one's in the firehouse, the other one's in the ambulance station.
Gotcha.
Can I interject for Smithsburg as well? Part of our coverage area also has a DES paramedic asset because we cover the area of Leitersburg, and there's a paramedic assigned to the engine company over there. So the 1814 unit, we looked when we wanted to switch the model that we would be using those as our ALS support. And then the other side of that would be we're sandwiched on the other side by CRS, who can bring our ALS supervisor out.
Dave, you ready to begin where you left off?
Yeah. So again, you'll see December, January, and February for the division ALS staffing shortages. The numbers vary somewhat, but the stations that typically are not staffed significantly are the same. One of our hardest places to staff is that Roarsville unit because it doesn't have a supervisory component. And you also see the Hancock Fires, historically one of the stations that has the larger unstaffed hours, and that's because in the hierarchy of things, we work to keep staffing at the stations that provide more of a global resource response. We are working on a scenario to try to improve that Roarsville number until we can get additional hired, but nonetheless, that is certainly one of our nemesis and weak spots.
So the next slide. Next slide talks about the weaknesses of the current EMS deployment model. A lot of these conversations you've heard in some variation or presentation in the past, but the biggest struggle is you have 8 independent EMS companies that have to employ their own staff, and I used to just use that, but I realized the division's now the 9th. So I think what you can see in this presentation, or I would think that we have presented here, is that with the EMS system as far as employment options being divided by 9 different agencies, none of us are doing it well. And the sustainability of that is likely not favorable. Some of the things here we highlighted earlier, there's a limited ability to move EMTs and paramedics from one station to another station for strategic coverage when these shortages occur. The 8 employers, the ability to recall voluntary and mandatory shift coverage is limited because they're each their own employer. There's no consistency or not real consistency in the companies, the volunteer corporations' mandatory or holdover policies for their employees. And then again, the limited retention and recruitment challenges due to career path growth. One of the biggest things that the division feels is problematic is inconsistent salary and compensation between the volunteer companies themselves, and then also now even county paramedics, which creates an inequality among employees who are performing the same jobs with different employers. And again, we believe that alone is one of the single most significant points of failure in the current system. One of the things we realized last year was the county cannot set wages for the volunteer corporation employers because that creates a joint employer status. And Kirk, if I'm off, you'll correct me, I hope. But that creates a joint employer status, meaning the county is now considered part of that employer, and then the hours are no longer separate between 8 individual employers. They become aggregate. So if somebody's working at Station A and works a secondary job at Station B, once they hit 40 hours, regardless of the employer, everything above that 40 is now overtime. So we had to have a hands-off approach to that. We were able to help them standardize health insurance through the $1 million, but we couldn't actually stipulate what that health insurance policy had to be because, again, it would have crossed over that same bridge. Number 8, the initial cost to transfer employees over to county employment, if that was an action that we took, it's going to be quite challenging. But the cost to sustain the current deployment model will also exponentially increase because the volunteer companies have no opportunity to use what's called the 7K exemption, the FLSA exemption for overtime that the county can for those providers that are dual role. EMS-only providers couldn't use that exemption even if they were county employees, but we do believe there's a fair number of current employees in the volunteer corporations that likely already do that dual role provider and are being compensated for that dual role status and therefore would qualify for the 7K exemption. So that creates some budget savings long term. We talked about the $1 million. We put that in just a year ago, and I think you can see the numbers really have not changed in a positive way for the most part with the system still designed as it is. So next slide. What can we do? So there's really only 2 options here. The first one, in my opinion, is not really a viable option. We've been down this road, and it's the road that we tried again last year. But we could look at the viability, sustainability of additional dollars to the private corporations to maintain their own employment status. We don't know what that number would be. We've had several meetings and discussed that, and for the most part, most companies have at least continued to indicate that more money is not the fix to this problem. If we were to go down that road, there's a list of questions here we'd have to answer. Is what is the additional dollars that are needed? How would that create additional sustainability and recruitment and retention of providers? And then can budget continue to afford what is truly a separation of EMS-only workforce by the employer being the volunteer corporations? And then the last part is there's little cross-staffing utilization of fire suppression between the 8 individual employers. I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all, but it doesn't happen systemically. So, but that's really where option 1 would be. The second option is consideration of a gradual transition of current corporation career staff into county employment, which is something you heard 3 years ago as one of the potential opportunities that you could do. That particular action has been identified in at least 2 separate consultant studies over the last 7 to 8 years. And then we would also have to look at which companies would support a merger of staff. We've not had that absolute conversation with the companies because we didn't want to be presumptive of what the board might consider or might not consider. And then we need to know how many EMTs and paramedics we need. We probably already know that number in the first year, second year, third year, if that was a direction that you chose. And then here's probably one of the biggest questions that we have to work through is how would county benefits be applied or handled? But again, we have had little to no discussion about the specifics of that because we don't want to be presumptive about what the commissioners might support or might not. Next slide. Next slide. So next to last slide here talks about what the BOCC has already done or attempted to try to improve the sustainability and stability within the current EMS system. We discussed and overviewed the $1 million for health insurance that was brought in FY21. Originally 10 years ago, well, about 11 years ago now, we put $2 million of EMS subsidy cash into wages. We currently provide $500,000 in fuel maintenance reimbursement for EMS transport units. That was brought forth in FY27. And then just last year, we collaborated on wage scales in an effort to try to eliminate hiring providers from each other. But that still does occur at times throughout the system. And then in FY22, we're trying to use our firefighters to the best of the ability to assist in upstaffing EMS calls. But I can tell you, our conversations about using firefighters to do that was never based on the significance of staffing deficiencies that exist today. It's just not possible. We do utilize our full-time paramedics and firefighters where possible to upgrade or staff EMS transport units, and again, that's FY22. However, the staffing deficiencies have gotten to a number. We're not moving the paramedics as much anymore as we're using chase vehicles to fill in the voids and going after that fully staffed BLS ambulance. And then the BOCC provides PPE, SCBA, EMS supplies, vehicle property and casualty insurance, and all of that has been FY17 through FY22 and continues on in FY23. And again, I just want to sum the entire presentation today up with 2 critical points. The first being what we covered in slide 2 at the beginning of this presentation is, again, all 8 EMS companies in the division are doing everything possible to keep the EMS system alive and functioning. We're at a point of decision and direction. And then the last one is really about the providers that are out there. We've not had a real opportunity to have dialogue about any plan details with the providers specifically who would be the most affected by any decision to move to county employment or otherwise. So subsequently, and if you're hearing things, they just don't know what they don't know. And we've just not been able to have those conversations with those folks. So with that, I'm complete my presentation. I'm going to turn it over to President Fishak for comments, and then we'll see where we're at.
So we've been here before. This is not the first you've heard about our struggles with EMS. It's been a struggle that's been on the table since I've taken over as president almost 3 years ago. And the discussions have occurred long before that. I can remember my dad, who was president of the association many years ago, working on an EMS plan. So this is not something that we have not been dealing with for a very long time. Also, would like to point out that this is a nationwide problem. You look at, do a search for any news articles, EMS staffing is nationwide. There was an interesting article by the NBC News just in October of 2021. They discussed the EMS shortage and how within 2020, about a third of the EMS workforce took a different career path or left that field of employment. It's here, it's present, and if we do not take some action to make a change, we are not going to be able to continue to staff and provide the service the way I see it going forward. We've come out of a pandemic where many have had a burnout rate. They were taxed to their limits during the pandemic with EMS transport and what they had to deal with. We have the inability to hire people because we don't have a local paramedic program. That is changing. We're coming forward with the hiring of the instructors and putting that program in place, but you don't turn a switch and get paramedics overnight. It takes time to train them. We're even having difficulty training EMTs. The state of Maryland just has put for the EMT program, they're offering a stipend. If you are enrolled in EMT and you pass at certain levels, they're going to give you money to continue on training. That's how critical the program is for training providers. So we need to make a change. And if you ask me what that change is, I don't know the correct answer, because with any change, there's threats. So there's a threat if we hire a few paramedics, we cause a weakness in the system. If we take on all the paramedics, I understand it's a heavy cost and a burden to you. And I shouldn't just say paramedics, I mean paramedics and EMTs. If we take on everybody, you know, that doubles the size of Dave's department, which becomes HR problems, becomes finance problems, becomes management problems. If we only hire a few, we know that numerous of those work for multiple corporations, so we could create a shortfall there. So the plan needs to be well thought out. I do not believe giving extra money to any of the corporations is going to help. We've been down that path. Now, I will not kick a gifted horse in the mouth. If that's what you decide and you tell us to do, we will make it work, but I'm going to tell you it's just a short-term Band-Aid.
Dave, what if, you know, as this was, I'm sorry, Dell, as this was brought to my attention, I always was with the impression that it was a money issue, that there wasn't enough money to keep people in their positions. So I've heard from both of you, money is not the issue. So what if we were to invest our money into a very similar incentive program and training program instead of just, you know, I've got an email that I was looking at here that asked about 20 different questions that, you know, 20 different concerns that they had about being brought on as county employees, all the what ifs. And, but what if we thought this out from a standpoint of if it's not a money issue, then using money to get more people hired, give them grants that they don't have to repay once they finish the training program, maybe incentivize in that area instead of, I don't know who in here is an EMT or a paramedic, but you know, even reimbursing some people that may have already went through the program. I don't know, but maybe that's an option.
I would say all, excuse me, I would say all options are worth looking at, but when we talk about the money is not the solution. You know, giving another $100,000 to a company that's really struggling with the HR issues and the hiring and the retention and there's no growth within the organization. You know, if you get hired at XYZ Ambulance Company, other than, I would say, CRS, there's no real room for any promotional path. You're either hired as an EMT or a paramedic. Now, if you're an EMT, you can go on and become a paramedic and change your career path a little bit, but there's no room for advancement. You know, you're not going to become an officer or a supervisor or administrator there. You're pretty much stuck there. The other issue that Dave identified was, you know, if I work at the busiest ambulance company in Washington County, there's no way for me, after I'm there for a couple years, to find any relief. I can't say, hey, I want to transfer to a slower company because there's no transfer option. So they're the real issues that we need to deal with. You know, a person that's at CRS 5 years is gonna be burnout maybe, you know, but there's no option for them to go to a slower station. Or vice versa, maybe you're the new paramedic and you're just wanting to run calls, so you wanna go to a busy station. But the only opens is at a slower station. So then when you transfer, you identified all those issues with, there's no transfer of seniority, no transfer of time earned in a retirement system or anything. So they're the real issues we need to get to, and I think that's what can help stabilize our system, as opposed to just offering money to them.
Money, or as the chief of Smithburg, how does your department feel about this? How would you, and Dave, I'm quite sure, are you talking about something like we did with firefighters and bringing in 8 paramedics and they're placed in different departments, or are we talking about bringing all staff on?
So the thing that's different with what we did with the firefighters and EMS is there's already an EMS, career EMS system in Washington County. It's just owned by 9 different employers. So what we would be talking about is, and I'm going to use the word merging of staff, not merging of companies, but just the people. And those companies that are interested in that type of relief would be the ones that we would be speaking about. I don't think you force any company that doesn't want to come to do so.
Do you think there would be companies that wouldn't want to come on board with this?
I think that's a possibility, yeah. But we haven't, you know, I think it's unfair to answer that question in either side of that, whether there would be companies that would agree to come or not come, because we haven't been able to have official conversations, meaning the commissioners would allow us to consider this and then work through all of the details of what that might look like. Again, because what happened 3 years ago, there was a feeling that we promised things that didn't occur. And, you know, I tried my best this time to make sure that the choices of words and all of those things didn't promise anything, that these are discussion points, and that's just what they are. I can tell you a couple weeks ago, I talked to 4 different chiefs, and their position would be absolutely they would want to come. They want that relief. They don't want to be the HR director, the employer, the scheduler, and all those things, because most of them are doing it with volunteers. I mean, the volunteers are doing that role, not all, but most. And that's their words, not mine. But again, I couldn't sit here today and give you without question who those companies are. But if we come out of here with some type of consensus that we could move forward with a conversation like this to some level, then we would have those intimate conversations. And not just with the company leadership, we need to have it with the providers so that they're getting qualified and quality information. And it's not that the leaders are not telling the truth. That's not what I'm trying to insinuate here. But you know, as things progress down the chairs, so to speak, certain parts of that information gets lost, or if they ask a question a little differently, that person either has to ad-lib what they think the right answer is. So I think we probably can resolve some of the fear that may be out there from some employees or potential employees. The other thing I want to come back to, and I want to make sure I'm clear on, when I say money isn't the problem, that more money isn't needed, I don't mean specifically in a general sense of wages. There's always room for improvement in wages. So those corporation wages and the county paramedics and EMTs wages and firefighters at some point are all going to need to be addressed. So I don't want to be misleading that money isn't the problem with that. But generically speaking, general money out there, the consensus was, even as of a week ago on a Wednesday night, with almost every company, if not every company in attendance, that just another check is not going to fix this problem.
Yeah, one email said that this young lady has been working as an EMT or paramedic, whichever it was, since 2012, and her question was, if we are brought on, will I maintain my seniority? Will I maintain my pay grade? How will all that look? And so without talking to the individual employees.
Yep. You've got it right there. I mean, that is exactly the questions that we need to answer. But we've not been able to do that because,
I was going to ask, why haven't you?
Well, when we get down into in my opinion, when we get down that far into those discussions without some direction from this board to do that, I think we're violating or working outside of a scope that I have the authority to do.
Dave, you know, I was on the ESAC with you guys the other night. Several of you are in here, and there is a lot of questions. And you know that how I feel about it. I've explained it to everybody on the ESAC. I think Chief Buck summed it up the best, and of course Dale asked me 100 questions, but I think Chief summed it up the best. Whatever we do, once we get these, as we go along, get these questions answered, if we would hypothetically take on 1 station, 2 stations, 3 station, there has to be a long-range plan when we do that. So, you know, okay, so now a year from now or 6 months from now or 2 years from now, we're going to do this. We just can't say, okay, we're going to take on 2 stations that want to come, and 3 years later we say, okay, now what are we going to do? Right. So I just wanted you all know that.
Yeah.
But that's going to be very important.
And I would tell you, if we receive direction, and let's just say that you can't bring them all, but you can bring some of them potentially. The plan that I would bring forward, you know, with conversation with the groups, would basically identify what that first group would look like. And then it would have an attachment that says, look, in FY24, we would want you to consider, you're not committing to it, but consider doing this. And then FY25, if it takes that long to get there, we would want you to consider doing this. So you would get that A to Z look. It's just right now, in this current budget year, this is what we would propose to do based on your direction.
You want a consensus to start moving, investigating, and answer all these questions. Assets, who owns what, the corporations, what are they going to do with their building, their ambulances? Do they have mortgage payments?
Right.
That's the kind of question.
Yeah, we do. And I think we can probably answer those questions today, because we are just talking staffing. So right now, we don't own any fire stations. I know we're going to buy a reserve fleet, but we don't own any primary fire apparatus. We put staffing in volunteer-owned corporation buildings and assets. This is the exact same thing, except for their primary mission is going to be EMS, not fire.
So what I'm hearing, you want some kind of consensus from us for you to move forward, bringing us a plan from A to Z. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Go ahead.
I think we need a little bit, we've been here before, and we've heard come back with 2 or 3 plans. I really believe we need to, and I don't want to pressure you to make a decision today. I just want to be upfront with that. But I think at some point we need to know what the direction is. The direction is, are you thinking that you're going to give just more money, which is an option, or are you going to want to plan to bring on stations? And how do you want that to look? You want to bring the whole system on? You want to bring the system on staged, you know, over a time frame that Dave just, you know, gave you an example of? We just need that direction. We can work with any plan. But one of the downfalls to where we've been in the past is just what you 2 gentlemen have identified. You know, the people that are the end result of this are the employees that are out there. And we really have to work with them and be able to give them what we're looking at in the plan. Until we can have discussions with them, I don't really think we can move forward. There's a lot of what-ifs.
I think there's so many unanswered questions. My direction would be, if it was you were asking me, I can't speak for the other 4, would be, I think over the years, it's time to do something more. I think I'd want to see, I definitely wouldn't want to take everybody on at once, but I'd like to see what it would be like to 1 to 3 stations maybe.
That's what we're looking at.
And that was your recommendation, I think, if I heard it correctly. And it doesn't mean we're going to do it. It's just, I want to hear all these unanswered questions.
But if that's the plan you want us to work on, we just need to hear that.
Dave and Dale,
Go ahead.
just to piggyback off of what Randy had said a little bit, I've heard a lot of feedback on, since our agenda has come out, but even before then, of course. And there's mixed ideas even amongst the EMTs and paramedic workers out there. I would say that larger majority favors county government being the employer at the end of the day. And I think that's the direction that my opinion is based on what I know would go in that direction as well. I prefer, just again, based on what I know now, there's still more to learn, that we have a phased-in approach. I know there's some downsides to that, but that allows us to truly grow it within our budget organically and make sure our revenues that we receive are a bit more solid. Because last thing I would want to see is we take over the EMS system and then our budget may crash for whatever reason, an economic recession. And what are we going to do then? So I think that's a safer alternative. Slow and steady. Good things are always worth waiting for. But you know what? They've waited long enough. I would say that one of the concerns I've heard about bringing on companies in a staggered approach rather than all at once is the seniority issue. You have that covered in your slideshow. And I hear that from the workers out there, the EMTs, the paramedics. And on one hand, I think, well, that's not necessarily a comment about what's best for the system in our county, but I'm an employee too, and I get the fairness aspect of it. I get it.
They matter.
Could we do something, maybe if we did do a staggered approach, maybe this needs more consideration. Could we look at, okay, July 1st of this year, if you are a full-time employee within the system, that's when your seniority starts. I understand maybe not everybody as we bring those employees into the system, they're making their company pay, some are making company pay, some are making county pay. But when they get to that point where that's a company that we take on, they're automatically credited with a year, 2 years of service, whatever it may be. So their pay's brought up. Maybe their retirement is brought up to that point. Vacation time, whatever those fringe benefits may be. Is that an approach we can take? And I know, again, it doesn't cover wage while one person's a company employee, one person's a county employee, but that seniority is still at least resolved, that issue.
Yeah, I think any of those questions are things yet to be determined. I can't speak to that because that's probably an HR question, but our goal would be is once we receive direction from the commissioners is several things. Director Chisholm had come up with what I think is a solid idea is we probably will do some town hall style meetings in the areas and invite the providers because we need to hear from them. I mean, they're going to be the most affected by this. I don't know many people that could afford to take a $5,000 or $10,000 a year pay cut. So we have to be willing to address those conversations. And I get the seniority conversation and all those things. And we've had conversations, I think, that starts down those roads. But again, without being totally presumptive, we haven't really walked those to the end of the road so that we could create a real presentation to bring here that says, this is what we're proposing to merge county staff. This is who, this is when, this is the cost, and here are all the details that we can answer positively.
Speaking of salaries, maybe you can just give me a quick answer. Maybe you don't know the details yet. What we would propose for a salary, where does that fall in with what the companies are providing? Are there employees that would if Broadwin would take a pay cut? Are there employees that would receive a pay increase?
If we just apply black and white and took them back to a step one, absolutely, they would take a significant pay increase. I'm not going to recommend that. I don't believe that's the right course of action. We will work out some type of salary matrix where hopefully we can bring them over somewhere close to their current wage. And if it's way above what county employees would be, is maybe freezing that wage for a period of time so that the step increases can catch up. But again, some of that's a little premature, but I just want to try to tell you how far out we plan to look to try to make sure that this thing can be as beneficial for all, but ultimately the citizen. That's the one that has to win in this, the citizen.
I think you're good. I agree with these two, but I think the first step is to start talking to the employees. You said it yourself. I think Dell said it. The employees are the most important part of this, Will, and so they should be addressed first.
Yep.
Not to interrupt, I think you kind of, go ahead, Terry.
Just for me, listening to everything, it's important that you're going to have the dialogue with the providers. I think that really needs to take shape and get moving forward. And I'm not saying that I'm set on phasing in or what have you.
Sure.
But I think that's an important step as far as the finances and how it's all going to be funded, the phase-in approach. And then the third thing is, I think we really need to look at the small companies and know that they can't provide the services 24/7, and we need to really address and give them some help also.
Okay, fair enough.
Does that give you an idea?
Yeah, I think we've got a consensus to work on a plan that involves some degree of merging employees, if I'm understanding what I'm hearing.
So it sounds like there's a consensus for the next step maybe a town hall meeting, someone had said that. I don't know which direction that came from. Could we set a date for that, maybe when you will next bring back the next step, the next plan, when the first conversations will start as a community? Can we get something rolling? And
When you say, pardon that, when you say town hall, do you mean with that company?
With-
Or with the community? From
No,
that-
with the providers. This isn't,
This isn't-
I don't intend to open this up to the general public.
This is just for the provider at their station.
Yep,
or like-
but we might be able to do a couple stations at the same time to get back to, I think, where you're driving, that this isn't 6 months down the road.
we have a little momentum now. It sounds like there's a clear consensus, just, I don't want to lose that momentum.
So
County, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, I wanna answer Commissioner's question. What I would ask you is to allow us about 2 weeks to get our feet on the ground, to come up with some type of planning cycle when these things would work. We'll report back in staff comments, at least what that's gonna look like, with hopefully a future date that we might be able to be back before the board with an agenda item.
County administrator
And,
has
I was just gonna say, I mean, obviously, meeting with the providers, and I think all that's important, everything that's been said this morning. From the county perspective, I mean, there's a lot of questions on the county side. Dave and I met last week, and we had, had more questions than answers, and that's where we all are right now. From a county perspective, our human resources, our resources in HR, our resources in budget and finance, and our resources in DES, because you're bringing more employees in, we have to look at all that to make sure that we have the resources in county government to take this on. So, and of course, the financial, that goes without saying. So we have all those questions that we have to answer. Obviously, we have some experience bringing on some firefighters. We're talking about over the long haul, this is going to be a bigger situation than that. So we are going to have look at it from the HR perspective, from budget and finance, and from DES as to how those things are going to look like in county government, and of course our current county employees and how that's going to fit in when we bring in a number of employees and where they're going to slot in. And we need to be conscious about, because we have obviously people working in DES right now and how that's all going to fit in, and our general county employees. So we have a lot of questions on our side too. And now that we have some direction, we can start asking and trying to answer those questions. But there are a lot that we need to answer on our side too. So.
Can I just ask one quick question? When we were talking about money, we talked about a particular number, and was that for what we're discussing here now? Or, okay. All right.
All right. You have your directions. Please move forward sooner than later.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for allowing us an extended time frame. I know we're over, but.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Next up, Mark Bradshaw, memorandum of agreement. Thank you, Dave Hayes.
Yes, sir.
Mark, please introduce yourself and the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Bradshaw, Director of Environmental Management. I'm here today to request approval to execute the memorandum of agreement between the Maryland Department of Human Services and the county. In order for the county to participate in Maryland's low-income household water assistance program, the attached memorandum of agreement needs to be approved and executed. The LIHWAP program is a new federal funded program providing benefits for water and wastewater costs for low-income households. The LIHWAP will assist Maryland families who are behind on their drinking water and wastewater bills, focusing on accounts that are 30 days or more past due. The state of Maryland is making payment on behalf of the customers who are past due, so we do not have water services cut off or have their wastewater service restored. For the physical impact, there are no physical impacts to the county. The county attorney's office has reviewed the MOA for legal sufficiency, and they're okay with it. And I also talked to the lady at the state who's representing that, and so far they have received 46 applications from Washington County residents and the program hasn't even been advertised yet.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, Foreign Trade Zone, number 255. Linda Spence, please come forward. Introduce yourself in the matter.
Hello again, Linda Spence, Business Specialist for the Department of Business Development and Foreign Trade Zone, Local Zone Administrator. What I am presenting today is to approve changes to the grantee zone schedule for Foreign Trade Zone number 255, including additional administrative fees for handling activities within the Foreign Trade Zone. When Foreign Trade Zone 255 was established in 2002, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, you as a grantee, chose not to collect fees for activity inside the Foreign Trade Zone, subzones, or its sites. Nearly 2/3 of the state of Maryland's Foreign Trade Zone grantees collect administrative fees, with the majority of those being municipality grantees. The Foreign Trade Zone is a tool designed to help our businesses realize significant profits in doing business inside its boundaries. With it comes a tremendous amount of administrative support, such as document processing, monitoring activities within the boundaries, and maintaining and working knowledge of the policies and procedures with the U.S. Department of Commerce and U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. Fees charged to Foreign Trade Zone 255 operators and users would help recoup taxpayer dollars spent on administrative reports, etc. After some research, it was determined a fair and equitable rate is as follows. Application fee, $500. Activation of a subzone or site, $4,000. Deactivation of a subzone or site, $3,000. Annual reporting and monitoring fees assessed at 7 cents per square foot, and outside storage at $175 per acre. Any questions?
Linda, many of these amounts seem, you said you did your due diligence and they seem fair based on what other counties were charging. If there was ever an opportunity or request from the commissioners to waive a fee because a particular project could generate so many new jobs, would we have that opportunity? Or once they're set, they're set?
Once they're set, but we can change the zone schedule at any time.
Okay.
So if you decide later down the road you just don't want to do that, we just have to change the zone schedule.
Okay.
This is really not used much. It's rare.
It has not been used since we created it in 2002. However, we have increased interest in using that and expect to activate the zone shortly.
Would this go into effect with our fiscal year budget, or would this be immediate?
Commissioners, any more comments? Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank
you. Next up, Emergency Management Grant Award approval. Please introduce yourselves in the matter.
Cody Swope, Emergency Management Specialist.
Rachel Souter, Senior Grant Manager, Office of Grant Management.
Approve the submission of the fiscal year 2022 Emergency Management Performance Grant to the Maryland Department of Emergency Management in the amount of $102,000 and accept the funding as awarded. The purpose of the Emergency Management Performance Grant program is to provide federal funds to assist state, local, tribal, and territorial emergency management agencies to attain the resource required to support the national preparedness goals associated with the areas and core capabilities. The Emergency Management Department is expected to award the county $102,000, which will be used to fund the salary of emergency management planner and provide needed personnel protective equipment for emergency management personnel when conducting damage assessments in areas hit by disasters. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the grant guidelines. The performance period for the federal grant is October 1st, 2022 through June 1st, 2024. There's a 100% match required for the grant, which will be accomplished by using the emergency manager's salary as an in-kind service. This grant provides $102,000 for emergency management related expenses, which may otherwise be charged to the emergency management budget.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? First and a second. Any other comments? In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Next up, State Homeland Security Grant. Welcome back. Please introduce yourselves in the matter.
Cody Swope, Emergency Management Specialist.
Rachel Souders, Senior Grant Manager.
Move to approve the submission of the fiscal year 2022 State Homeland Security Grant to the Department of Emergency Management in the amount of $177,000 and accept the funding as awarded. The State Homeland Security Grant Program is administered by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and passes through the Maryland Department of Emergency Management to be distributed to local jurisdictions. The program is intended to enhance and maintain current Homeland Security incentives as they pertain to prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. The grant will pay partial salary for the emergency management specialist, the cost of the Washington County Citizen Notification Software, annual fees, and a part-time position within the Washington County Sheriff's Office for incident management team coordination and projects. Other costs which include training, equipment, public outreach, and response capabilities. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the grant guidelines. The performance period for the federal grant is September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2025. There is no matching fund requirement associated with this grant. However, at least 25% of the grant funds must be spent on law enforcement related tasks or equipment. This grant provides $177,000 for emergency management related expenses, which may otherwise be charged to the emergency management budget.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, intent to quit claim Hood Street.
Hang on there.
Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator, Division of Engineering. This is intent to quitclaim Hood Street to the Maryland Stadium Authority. Move to adopt the ordinance declaring certain real property as surplus property, Hood Street, and approve the quitclaim of the same and authorize the execution of the necessary documentation to finalize the conveyance. Maryland Stadium Authority and City of Hagerstown have requested that the county quitclaim any interest it may have in Hood Street to the Stadium Authority for the Hagerstown Multi-Use Sports and Events Facility. Hood Street is within city limits and has been maintained by the City of Hagerstown for over 50 years. Deed research, however, has indicated an easement was never recorded for Hood Street. The original ownership of Hood Street can be traced back to the owner of the former Grand Union Market, where the current county administrative annex is located. Out of abundance of caution, a quitclaim will transfer any interest the county may have in Hood Street to the Maryland Stadium Authority. The City of Hagerstown will also transfer all interest they have through a quitclaim deed.
Imagine something not getting recorded, huh? 50 years ago.
Right.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, budget presentation, Andrew Eisman, Zane Rowe. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Zane Rao, Deputy Director of Highways.
We're here this morning to give a budget presentation for FY23 for the Highway Department. So just to give a little bit of an overview here on the revenue and expense side, we're talking about a $11.8 million budget at the Highway Department, one of our largest departments, and they're responsible for not only road maintenance, but a lot of mowing of county right-of-ways, stormwater ponds, snow and ice removal, line striping, signal maintenance, and also cover fleet maintenance for county-owned vehicles. There is a packet here that has a breakdown of each proposed account for the Highway Department. The operation is divided into general operations, road maintenance, snow removal, storm damage, traffic control, and fleet management. A little bit on the revenue side, there's been some discussion recently in Annapolis about highway user revenues. Currently, we receive about $2 million in highway user revenue that goes towards funding the Highway Department. There are several bills under consideration. One, to prevent the sunset clause from expiring, which would reduce what we're currently receiving, and some others with various amendments to try to restore to some funding levels. So at this time, we don't have any clear picture, but just to give some perspective, back in 2009, that era, we were receiving around $9 million per year. We've never come close to getting back to that level. The remaining amount on the revenue side comes from general funds, with some smaller amounts coming from equipment, vehicle sales, recycling, that sort of thing. So we're going to go through just briefly here and touch on the high points. If you have questions, feel free to ask. So on the different accounts, under general operations, that's kind of the administrative overhead category. We actually have about a $5,000 decrease in that category. Road maintenance, this is the largest category and accounts for the labor and materials to directly maintain the roads. It does look like in that category the wages and benefits are increasing substantially, but that's largely due to how the position vacancy savings were budgeted countywide last year, when there's an equivalent of 6 full-time positions that were assumed to be vacant in the department. In this current budget in FY23, it shows about a $290,000 increase, but when you compare that to what was in the budget for FY21, that number's really only gone up $15,000, or about 0.2% over a 2-year period, and that includes the raises that were given to existing employees. On the staffing side, we've seen recently many experienced employees retire, and we have been hiring newer employees and taking the time to train those, and those employees have come in at the beginning of the scale. But in some cases, you know, we're facing the same challenges as everyone else, that some of those employees are going elsewhere after we spent some time training them. I'll turn it over to Zane now to talk a little bit about the snow removal, winter maintenance.
The snow removal account was our largest increase this year, and that's mainly due to material price. This past year, we saw a $17.44 increase per ton for salt. We were at $76.38. I think we're probably going to be in the 90s this coming year. We did get into the salt brine application this past winter. We did see a lot of positive results. We bought 13,000 gallons of brine. We used 8,000 gallons. We were paying 53 cents a gallon for that to be made and delivered. This year it's going to be 75 cents. So that is our largest increase for the snow removal. One other note, we were down 40, or we only used 45% of our 8-year average as far as tonnage goes this past winter. So we were lucky, but it only takes one winter to blow that. So, anybody have any questions?
I can't find part-time wages, and is there a section in here on part-time wages?
There should be.
Do you
It
mean
depends
our-
on which section you're looking at. Part-time wages, we do have, there should be some part-time wages under, is it the maintenance category, Zane? Yeah, so under road maintenance, part-time wages.
What page would that be?
With tab.
I printed off my individual sections, so it looks like 18-13.
Yes, road maintenance.
So those part-time wages, I assume, would be for, we have inmate crew guards that help with trash pickup,
It would be that.
and we have a
also
few MEO1.
MEO ones for pond mowing.
Zane, what?
Yes.
Or Andrew, whoever, I saw your, obviously all of our prices are going up, and you haven't even gotten the fuel yet, I don't think, unless I didn't hear it. What figures are you using for inflation in your budget?
Typically 5%, which is really conservative. I mean, I guess historically that seems to be pretty good, but it's pretty, volatile now, and everything's jumping. Concrete, blacktop, stone.
How much are you gonna exceed your fuel budget, say, for instance?
Well, I can get to that if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I'll jump ahead.
Yeah, so we'll just go down through, we do have a storm damage account, which is our smallest in there. You wanna
Yeah,
say
that's
towards
just for rental equipment. Overtime, you get summer storms, we get bridges backed up with, timbers, lumbers, trees for cleaning those out. Anybody have any questions on that? And I think Andrew currently hit on the job openings. We have currently now 6 openings, but I think the board's gonna, three jobs will be coming in front of you all later, so that will reflect 3.
So then to get back to your question about how these things are budgeted and estimated, yeah, there are some inflationary costs that are taken into account. Budget and Finance also does a lot of background work, looking at kind of rolling historic averages for things. So when it comes to things like fuel costs, they look at that price. We do buy wholesale, and so they set what the budgeted amount should be that we'll pay per gallon. So at the time when these budgets were prepared, which was back in December that we did these, the figures that were in there were $2.50 a gallon for diesel and $3 a gallon for gas. So in terms of real numbers, we in the highway budget have $295,000 for diesel, $242,000 for gas. So we pulled the most recent delivery numbers, and we paid $4.08 a gallon for diesel and $3.84 for gasoline. So if you project those numbers out, which we don't know if they hold true, that's about an extra $250,000 if those are maintained. Now, we also are still trying to get clarification if the tax holiday applies to local government or not, and we haven't gotten an answer. I don't know if they took that into account.
We have filled out all the paperwork and sent it in, but still have not been able to get an answer on whether we're going to be, able to receive that break. Because I think when Governor Hogan signed that bill, as soon as he signed it, we had to dip our tanks, take meter readings, and then account for that when the bill expires. But as of this morning, we have not gotten confirmation that we'll be eligible for that.
So there's still a little bit of uncertainty there about what that final number will look like, and hopefully prices don't continue to climb higher than they currently are. But for reference, the average year-to-date price, looking back, and obviously we've seen a lot of increase, is $2.55 for diesel and $2.83 for gas. So I suppose if it's anyone's guess where things are going to go, other than I think we can all be assured that I doubt that we'll get down to those numbers as a historical average or an average for the year.
If that gas tax holiday does benefit the county as well, what kind of a dollar amount, how beneficial is that? Can you define that in a dollar amount, an estimate?
I do not have those numbers. it varies on how much, I guess, monthly usage we would use, and that fluctuates. But I guess it would be the 36 cents a gallon is how it would be calculated.
For an average month's,
Well, the
Volume of
gas
gasoline
tax
and
is
diesel use?
per gallon, so
Right.
you would take the usage, which I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we're talking about over hundreds of, like 112,000, if I think one number stuck in my head, but I can't remember if that's gas or diesel. It's a big number, either way, if we get a 36-cent savings that's passed on to us.
Andrew, do you know what you budgeted for last year for gas?
Yeah, actually, they were the same numbers, and here it is, it's actually in the budget packet on 1825. So it was 118,000 gallons for diesel and 80,666 for,
And do you know where you're at currently, budget-wise?
do you know that number, Zane?
No, I do not.
Year to date? No, I don't. We could get that for you if you'd like to see it.
And then one last thing, because I was sitting here looking at this while it's on the top of my mind. You have street lighting in here. I was up in the Cascade area, and somebody mentioned that there's only one light there at the park. And was wondering if there was something the county could do for additional lighting up there.
At Penmar
Has
Park?
Nothing to, yeah,
Okay, yeah, we can look into
okay.
that. Yeah.
Sorry.
So just kind of to summarize things a little bit, overall, the highway budget's increasing 361,000, about 3.15% compared to FY '22. Like I mentioned, some of that's due to just a difference in how the position vacancies are accounted for. But as we've just talked about and touched on, there's a lot of unpredictability with material prices, so I would anticipate that those would go up. So if we see a savings in one area, I think it could be offset by an increase in expenses.
One final question. If we do see more highway revenue funds come in, which is likely, the amount might be in discussion, but we're likely to see something more. Will your budget go down by that same amount? If we see 400,000 in highway revenue funds come in other words, we should see a zero increase in your budget.
Not exactly. The way it would work, I think Budget and Finance on the revenue side would say right now we're at $2 million. They would put in $2.4 million of highway user revenue. And so instead of being, say, $9.4 million general fund, it'd be $9 million general fund on the revenue side. So it would change the revenue side, but not the expenses unless you're requesting a cut to happen on the expense side.
Why wouldn't you, if you're replacing that 2 million, why wouldn't you go ahead and reduce that by the same amount? In other words, okay.
You still have the same amount of expenses.
Right. You still have the same.
Where the revenue, where we're showing
Right.
the revenue, right? So you're
Right.
talking about there'd be less coming from the general fund to the highway department, because it would be coming from highway use.
So if that's how you're looking at it, yes, the reduction would be from the general fund. It wouldn't unless you say, we don't want to budget 700,000 for salt, we want it to be 400,000, that would be a reduction.
Well, no,
That would
because
then-
we're
but-
going to,
But yeah, that's a big factor in all this, is the highway user revenue is a general fund source that can be used for limited purposes.
but if we're
So-
truly headed into a recession that everybody keeps yelling about, or actually we can say we are in a recession, it would seem to me that if we get more money than what we projected for highway user funds, then we could put that money back and not spend it. In other words, don't create any more expenses this year. You got what you got.
Right.
And then let's put that money back for future.
Yes, and I think, there's a lot of change, Commissioner,
Okay, my question is, how many miles of highway do we have right now?
about 900.
900. And how many currently is in this budget to pave this year?
Well, the paving contract goes through engineering, and I believe that came before you and is just a tick under 12 miles. So there's about 300 $15,000 for material maintenance that Highways does for patching and prep work. So they do some smaller road paving, but they're not the ones out doing 12 miles of paving.
Chip and seal, how many miles are we gonna do for chip and
30,
seal?
3,
And
30?
30, and has the cost of oil and that reduced the amount of roads we're gonna do this year from originally planned on paving?
Yeah, I
and
think
chip and seal?
absolutely. The rebid came out, and I believe Scott will have an update, but the chip seal contract, even with the price adjustments to count for increased asphalt costs, I think they still had to rebid that just because of other cost
So
factors.
would I be correct that the estimate to repave a road is probably about 8 years to repave, and chip and seal is more of a temporary situation, so we don't lose the entire road with potholes and loss of shoulder? Is that a correct?
Correct. So asphalt would be a structural repair that would actually add to the long-term longevity, and the chip seal is a surface application.
Chip seal 40 and pave 12, so we have, that's 50, so we have about 150 years before we get back to one road.
I think it's on the high. I think when I looked at just the asphalt costs, it was about almost an 80-year cycle if you were just looking
And I
at
look forward to the
asphalt.
return of highway user revenue, because we're 10 years behind in keeping our roads up with that loss of revenue. 10 years. And at one point, we were collecting more money at our emissions station on fees for emissions than we were receiving from the state in highway user paving, revenue paving money.
Well, for me, we haven't received any additional highway revenue user funds. Just move forward as presented, and hopefully we do get a lot more than we're hoping we get, and we can take care of some of our projects that should have been taken care of many years ago.
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, I think the bills that are pending, any increase wouldn't be seen, I believe, in this current year. They have a phased-in approach, and right now I've seen some various amendments that reduce it from what it was proposed based on the bill that was supported by MACO. So there's a lot still in flux right now, particularly on the county side.
We should know in a few weeks.
April, what is the end of session? April 13th, something like that?
I guess my main point in all this is, it would not be wise to increase our spending during a recession and do more work than what we've already budgeted for if we can put it off for a few years. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but what I was saying, what's the price of oil and blacktop and asphalt will be in a couple of years? Well, I'm not arguing against you. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. But projects you put off today are gonna cost more tomorrow. That's not.
Not necessarily. We don't, none of us know where we're gonna be in 2
That's
years.
why
I
I'm
think a
challenged.
change in,
That's why I'm just bringing that up for discussion.
I think a change in national leadership will.
Anyway, please.
Well, I think we're going to try to stay within our budgeted figures, but just recognize that, there's a lot of volatility, so.
And it,
Well, what's it cost to pave 1 mile?
Under the pavement maintenance contract, I think the average came to be 280,000. Now, if highways did it, obviously there's variable widths of road and everything change, but if you take those numbers, that's what it would be.
for diesel, we're at 77%, and gas, we're at 81%.
And
for
we,
the year.
we have a couple months, 3 months left in the year.
Correct.
So you'll probably come in under.
Close. Okay. Gentlemen, what next?
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for getting that so quick, Zane.
Next up, fiscal year 23 budget presentation, golf course. Please come forward, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon now, Andrew Eschwin, Director of Public Works.
Ryan Crabtree, Black Rock Golf Course Manager.
So we're here to give an overview of the Black Rock Golf Course budget and as well as the revenue and the expenses. So just to give you again an overview of kind of where the revenues come from and the expenses. On the revenue side, obviously, we have golfing fees generated by people getting tee times and playing the course. There's also pro shop sales, restaurant, which is the food and beverage sales, and then miscellaneous. We have some rental income, some miscellaneous things, and that's also where the general fund appropriation comes from. On the expense side, things are divided up to the general operations. It's more the administrative side of the budget, the clubhouse, the course maintenance, and the restaurant. So to go in on the golfing side and the golfing fees, overall, we continue to see strong play remain through COVID, and I would say we're optimistically cautious about that continuing. We aren't proposing any golf fee increases for the current season. We did have record numbers last year, and maybe Ryan can talk a little bit about what he's seen out there at the course and how we're managing the play and the tournaments.
Yeah, so during the week, our average age is 60 to 65. The weekend, the average age is 45 to 50. Average cost during the week is $26, and the weekend is $40. In FY21, we had 33,037 rounds, which might be the best year in rounds to date. So far in FY22, we have 17,183 total rounds. In FY21, it was 19,548. With less winter golf this year due to last year due to snow cover and low temps. So for our tournament and outing fees, 72 or more players at $38 a player get a 9 a.m. or 12 noon shotgun. 71 players or less is $46 per player, and tee times no shotgun. And the reason for this is to maximize the tee time sheet for the day. Once less than 71 players tee off, we're able to send public play behind them. No tee times wasted for the day. I don't want to reserve a shotgun over the whole golf course for just 60 people when the public still wants to play. I don't want to turn down public play. 9-hole tournament fees are $25. Tournament fees on the weekend are $52, which is the regular rate for the weekend.
And then, so Ryan, about how many tournaments do we have booked for the coming season?
So I have 42 total tournaments for this calendar year. That's 8 more than last year, and a guy emailed me this morning, so I'm going to be talking to them this afternoon. So that puts us at 43, hopefully, after today.
So I think that changes to balance the tournaments as well as the accommodating general play and find that balance.
That, you said there was only 8 more tournaments over the previous year?
Yeah, eight tournaments were added this year from last year.
Which is really good, because I remember last year when I made a motion to help subsidize a couple nonprofits, everybody was worried that we would end up with all these people showing up to want to do special tournaments. And so I would say that didn't happen. So anyway, but good job.
Well, and that's one way we want to incentivize the tournaments to be successful and drive more numbers with the kind of the 2-tiered system there with how the tournaments will be run, just so we're not blocking off the whole, course for 50 golfers, that we can still find that balance. So moving on to course maintenance, that's our largest expenditure category, and there's a $33,000 increase there. That's mostly due to wage and step increases, and that carries through other areas of the budget where there's staffing expenses. On the restaurant side, this is going to be where we're probably going to have the most change. For years, the county employed full and part-time staff operating restaurant, which in more present year was not a profitable part of the operation. And during COVID, restaurant operations ceased, and we have resumed to scale down operations with part-time staff. Although staffing's been a challenge, and with wages on the rise, we're in the early stages of looking at some options to lease out the restaurant service to the right partner. The partner would provide service to the clubhouse, the patrons, and we would look at flexibility for them to use the kitchen as a base of operations. It could be for a food or catering service or a restaurant beyond normal hours. So
Let me just say, I really like the idea of taking the restaurant and leasing that out to another entity. I think that's better suited for a private business than government operations, so thank you for that.
So yes, we're in the early stages, so if there is interest at this point, we're just trying to, I think it'll go out probably as a request for proposal to craft what would be a good fit for both us and potential business partners. So currently with renovations and things in place, the restaurant isn't operating, but we still do have prepackaged food and beverage and that sort of thing.
We'd retain the beer sales, right?
That's an item that in a proposal, if it's someone that doesn't have or have an interest in doing that, we could retain the liquor license. Obviously, we receive, is it 40-some thousand? So we would have to make sure we're not going to give away something that's very profitable for us, and that goes back to evaluating what would be a good fit. But at this point, we haven't ruled it out either way, but we currently have the liquor license. So in summary, overall, the budget increase is about 11,500, which is less than 1%, and the general fund contribution to the golf course decreases by 32,000. And so to balance the overall budget, 317,000 approximately is proposed to be appropriated from the general fund.
Just a comment, just from a moral standpoint, I'd be okay if a private entity was selling our alcohol as well. I don't know, that's a business I necessarily, again, like government being in. The general fund appropriation, good to see that declined a little bit. I know that's something that I've worried about for a while. Could we get a history of the general fund appropriation over time? And I know several months ago, maybe last year at this time, we had talked about meeting with our golf course advisory board just to help them understand that what we were doing with funding or assisting nonprofits with their golf games didn't take away revenue. And I think they were under the impression that the golf course was solvent, and it's not solvent. You know, there's a taxpayer subsidy that goes into the golf course that's still mighty heavy. Could we, now that the weather's breaking, could we maybe set up that joint meeting on a Tuesday after a commissioner meeting with our golf course board?
Yeah, I mean, we could. I mean, I think both this board and the golf board wanted to meet. There were a variety of reasons why that didn't happen. But yeah, I think now we can do that. I think the golf board's still interested in that, I believe. I'm looking at Andrew.
Yes, it's come up. And I think, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I mean, I'll say they are aware of the county's support over the years, and we've tried to make a lot of effort here recently to reduce that general fund subsidy. And obviously, we hope that what we're even proposing will come in under that, but that goes back to, we did get a bump during COVID with play and people having more flexibility, so we don't want to oversell ourselves, but so far, year to date, we are doing well on the revenue side compared to where the budget was. So, I mean, we'll wait to see how the spring season goes.
I know when I came in my first year, you guys have done a wonderful job turning this thing in the right direction. It's amazing what it looked like the day I came in and what it looks like now. So thank you for that.
Thank you. There's been a lot of people, more than just Ryan and I.
No, I meant the whole staff, everybody.
Right, yeah, everyone from top to bottom has really bought in, so.
Yeah, they've all done a great job. And the golf board, obviously the golf board's been a part of that too. So, so if that's what the board wants to do, we'll go ahead. I'll get with Andrew, and we'll get with the golf board, and we'll schedule a time for this board to meet with the golf board.
All right. Anything else, commissioners? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, transit budget presentation.
Good afternoon, Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Good afternoon, Kevin Cerrone, Director of Washington County Transit.
I'm gonna let Kevin do most of the talking.
I was gonna say, give him
me a break.
Give him a break. Give him a break. Just a little bit about Washington County Transit. The transit system actually is 4 different operational programs within the department, and then of course there's the capital side of it. So we have fixed route, which is known as the county commuter, or as some people refer to, the big buses. The ADA program, which is known as paratransit, which is the smaller buses for individuals with disabilities. The jobs program, which is the Job Opportunity Bus Shuttle is a service that we provide for the Washington County Department of Social Services, and it is funded by them. And then we have the taxi voucher program known as the Ride Assist program, where seniors and individuals with disabilities can apply for reduced vouchers that they actually use for their transportation needs in utilizing the local taxi systems that are in the area. And today we're talking about the operational side of it. As I mentioned, capital side of it. Both ends are funded largely with federal funds. Then there are some state funds put in there for matches, and of course the local portion that we will talk about today. So I'll start off with saying, ditto from what was discussed so far with regards to highways and even the golf course. Yes, fuel prices are a concern and an expense. And as the playing of golf is up, our ridership is recovering nicely from pre-COVID rates. When COVID first hit, the pandemic first hit, we actually dropped ridership down to 30% of what we were doing pre-COVID. We're now back fluctuating between 70, 75%. It's kind of plateaued out. Not quite sure if it's all going to come back or when it will all come back, but great strides have been made in getting that ridership back up. So in the revenue portion of the budget, as I mentioned, there is a federal grant, and I was in here a couple of weeks ago with the federal grant to submit it to the MTA. It's an annual thing. It requires a 50% match, and for the amount of money that we're getting and the federal money that's shown here, the match is made up from state money and the local county general fund. The state money has been capped. The general fund needed to pick up a little bit more of that to make up the 50% match. And then fortunately, after you utilize fares, advertising, other reimbursements, the expenses of the transit system do exceed the federal, state, local match of that portion of the funding. Last year, we were granted CARES Act funds, which can be used for all expenses related to COVID, and it's pretty loose how that is defined. One key word is that it can be used for what is known as overmatch. An overmatch is any revenue needed, like at the end of the year, for expenses that have exceeded the federal, state, and local portions of our funding. So with the way it was distributed by Maryland Transit Administration, we are using about $300,000 per year to cover those expenses, and we anticipate that we will get a 3 to 4 year, possibly even 5 year time frame out of that utilization of those funds. I guess a general statement that could be made is that the county portion will remain flat as it's shown, as long as the state continues to make up their portion. And we've gotten some word from the state that they may get back to their old numbers here soon, in which case that would balance out those matches that are required for the federal funding. So the department operates 2 facilities. We have the administration and maintenance facility up at 1000 West Washington Street, and of course we have the transfer center out back, which is addressed as 123 West Franklin Street. 60 employees. Of those 60 employees, 18 are full-time. The remainder are all part-time employees. On page 20-2 here, just to throw this out there, when you look at the category summary box, 76% of the cost of the operation of the transit system is salaries and benefits, and 14% is actual operating costs of the physical vehicles and maintenance of them and so on. So it's that 14% that I think will be the fluctuating number if fuel prices do not hold and they do continue to rise. But as I said, we in transit have been very fortunate that that CARES Act funding is out there, and we can tap that to absorb those increases. I don't want to belabor you unless you want to, going by line by line, number by number. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We talked about the federal funding, the matching funds. We have the same expenses as the other departments that you're hearing from with regards to benefits and operations, salaries,
just have one
I'm looking for
question.
something here. Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just have one question
Okay.
on this one. Your software doubled. Can you explain what caused that?
We operate two main programs utilizing software. One is on the maintenance side of it. It's the same software program that the Highway Department uses. And the other one is called a Route Match that is used for scheduling all of the trips for the ADA Paratransit, the Jobs program, and assists us with the routing of fixed route buses. When we originally purchased the Route Match software, it came in modules, so we slowly brought that up to where we were at today. During those procurements, we were allowed to use the capital funds that were applied to those programs, those modules, to add in annual licensing and maintenance fees as part of the purchase, the original procurement. Those fees in years 1 and 2 have currently ran out completely, or those earlier purchases have ran out completely, and now the total costs of all the maintenance and licensing fees are on us at this time.
All right.
And that was the big jump that you saw there. Yes, sir.
Kevin, if you said this, I'm sorry for asking you to repeat yourself, but why, I'm kind of surprised that our budget for diesel fuel and gasoline, you're projecting a decrease.
Some of that has to do with what I mentioned earlier, that budget and finance takes kind of that rolling historic average and plugs in, here's what the cost per gallon is, and then Kevin actually programs in what the number of gallons are that are used. So he can look back and maybe that number went down, and I believe the cost per gallon remained the same. So I think it speaks to a larger question of how much we go back and try to change the number that's programmed in there, or just kind of highlight that this is an area that we're going to probably see an increase in. To Kevin's point about how the funding breakdown works, the county for transit is buffered a little bit more than other departments on the expenses because of the CARES Act grants. And so that will continue to be the case for the 3 to 4 year period, but then recognize that whatever that overmatch difference is that's been covered is going to come back to the county. So we're in a little bit more of a secured situation with capping the amount that the county will have to absorb that increase. It could be covered by CARES Act, correct?
And another fluctuating number is mileage. Our ridership is down a little bit. The ADA Paratransit program, the Jobs program, are driven by trips that are actually scheduled. So with a little bit lower ridership that we're still experiencing, those vehicles are not making as many trips throughout a day, a week, a month. So the actual mileage number has gone down a little bit too. But with the way things are going with the fuel prices, I got a feeling we're going to see regardless of what formula we're using, we're going to see a higher number before it's all said and done.
Yeah. So, as we go throughout the fiscal year, and if prices are higher than what we budgeted, I'm wondering who sets the fair price? Is the ridership fee? Is that something we can set, or is that something the state sets or the federal government because they subsidize so much of?
There are some rules and regs to follow. You can set it, or the county can make the proposal. We do have to go, depending upon what the structure is, to public hearings that the public does have a say in it. But generally, it is the governing board, and in our case, it is the Washington County Commissioners can set those rates.
When was the last time any adjustment was made?
It's been years.
I'm just wondering if drivers have to pay more for their gasoline to get to work because gas price, it makes sense that riders, their cost to get to work would go up too.
We were talking about this kind of before COVID hit because it had been a long time. But I do think with the CARES Act money, if we would raise prices now, you're essentially passing that cost on to the rider versus being able to utilize the federal funds. And so the timing might be on the tail end of that when that cost burden is going to shift. And at that time, maybe look at the cost increase. We haven't explored that thoroughly, but that's effectively what would happen. Like on the operations side, there's only so many things that we can put this CARES Act money to. without incurring a lot of additional expenses that we'll have to continue later. So back to that formula, if we increase our ridership fares, that's gonna essentially whittle down the amount of federal money that we can then use to balance it out. So there's a,
And there's the balancing act of ridership too. If we bump up the fares, will we lose any ridership initially? History dictates that you do, you can gain it back. So it's a hit or miss.
What is the
Yes, sir.
current fare?
Base fare, which is where it starts, is $1.25 per trip, per person. So from there, it decreases. Seniors get a discounted rate at 95 cents or 60 cents, depending if it's peak or off-peak. Students with an ID, can be high school, can be college students, 85 cents. And then we have a rate for human service agencies that buy tickets from us to use for their clientele, and that rate is set at 50 cents per ticket. The average paying ride across the board, when you add everything up and jumble all the numbers, it's about $1 per ride of what we're charging right now.
I know if you take a taxi anywhere, it's like 10, 15 bucks for one ride.
It is.
I don't know that I'm for increasing the cost, and certainly not since we're getting subsidies right now, but anyway, I was just curious what the current rate was.
And one of the statements under the CARES Act funding is that it can be used for, quote, lost revenue, and ridership is technically revenue for us, so we can charge off those differences to that.
Commissioners, any other questions? Gentlemen, anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, FY '23 budget presentation, capital. Kelsey and Andrew, please introduce, Scott Hobbs, please introduce yourselves in the matter.
Good afternoon, Kelsey Mace, Interim Chief Financial Officer.
Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Scott Hobbs, Director of Engineering.
And today we're bringing forth Draft 2 of the Capital Improvement Budget. Draft 1 of the Capital Improvement Budget was presented on February 8th of 2022. Since then, only minor changes have been made. So currently, the FY23 capital budget is at $65,402,000. This is a $462,000 increase from Draft 1. $400,000 of that is in state funding, and $62,000 of that is from airport. So in tab 1 of your binders, or attachment A in your agenda packet, has the changes of Draft 2 versus Draft 1. For airport, based on their operating budget, they were able to supply all matching funds that was needed for the capital plan and did not need that general fund contribution. That contribution went to offset an increase in emergency services equipment of $140,000 for equipment that was approved in August of '21, but was not included in the requested budget. To offset the other portion of those costs, there was a decrease in the information systems project budget, county wireless project budget, and transportation ADA. The IT projects did still have an increase over last year. The second major change is the HCC budget. Based on the $600,000 contribution per year, I worked with Dr. Klauber to level out their projects based on that funding and to align it up a little bit better. The last change is in parks. If Andrew, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so some of you are aware, we receive program open space funding from the state. 25% of that funding is to be used for acquisition only, or must be used for acquisition only. Once we received the applications from the municipalities, we saw that there's going to be some potential funds there available for acquisition. And so this was to assign that money to a project. There's an acquisition we're considering and tentatively are working on for a Dobbs Woods expansion of some wooded property that's contiguous to the park.
Is this where you could mainly look at, or possibly look at the light situation up in Cascade?
Well, we'll handle that probably through operating budget with just one light, but yes, I mean, lighting and park projects are potentially funded under program open space.
So that's just the quick overview of what the changes were from draft one, if you have any further comments or direction on this budget.
Anything else? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Next up, fiscal year 22 general fund discussion.
Can I know we're moving on, and maybe this could just be answered by Kelsey. I'm sorry. Going through the capital budget, the Agriculture Education Center indoor multipurpose building.
Oh, this might be an Andrew question.
Okay.
Sit back down.
I know that was something that was presented to the commissioners to decide for how to use the COVID money. Is that still, should that, rather than, I'm sorry to say this, rather than it being hidden in our CIP budget, shouldn't we have more of a discussion on our COVID money? I know some ideas were brought to us, but I just,
So that project was included in the ARPA discussion, and I believe it was approved, I think maybe the week that you weren't present. So, I mean, as far as discussion on that, and then we included it in the capital improvement plan because it is a capital project, and we are assuming that we're gonna put some program open space funds and other things to fill out the
I go
budget.
back to, we did that survey with the public, and not scientific at all, but the public was pretty, I mean, it was pretty clear where they would like to see that money directed, and I just don't recall that being a priority for our public.
It wasn't specifically mentioned at the time. I mean, I think there was a category for tourism and some other things in there. And so recreation tourism was kind of the piece that it fit under.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, we looked at, obviously, when we had that discussion with the board, we looked at we had the ARPA funds, and then we had some reserve funds, and we were looking at how best to spend those, and we did look at the survey, and we tried to identify projects that would fit into those different categories. That's what we attempted to do.
I think we have a great facility at our Ag Center.
Right.
I don't know if that's a priority, in my opinion, and I'm just one of 5 votes, but I don't know if that's a priority. We talk about water and sewer as an economic development driver. What could we possibly do with that? That's another building to maintain and pay an expense on. I know we have some great events that take place there. One of the ideas was mentioned is we could use it as a max vaccination site if we need to. I don't think we had issues finding locations for vaccination sites during COVID, and I'd hate to plan for something that hopefully doesn't happen again, but we didn't have that problem this year or last year with that, finding a location. So I don't know why we need to build a building for a max vaccination site. That's a lot of money for that COVID relief money, and I don't know if that's what the public said that they wanted us to do. I think about our expansion and what we still have to do for the Public Safety Training Center. Talked about a gun range, a shooting range, maybe $17 million. That's close to a third of that cost. I think there might be better uses for that. I'm disappointed to see it in our CIP budget.
Well, and I'll just say that, so this board did vote, and I believe, I think.
I may have been
I
out.
think you weren't here.
Yeah.
The board did vote to do that, so staff is proceeding down that path. So that's why it's in there, because that's a path that would go once the board authorized us to go ahead down. So I hear you. That's why it's in there. That's why it's in there. So.
You bring up about the that shooting range. I just heard about that yesterday from somebody. Is that something new that based on the money we're getting is now becoming an issue? I thought that was already in the whole plan for that training facility.
It was in one of the additional phases that we weren't looking at doing for several years.
Okay, and there's what I see happening is that because we've had all these extra incomes, everything's getting moved up. And especially if we are headed into a recession, why are we moving all these projects up and not putting some of this money in our general reserve account so that when we come out of this recession, we have the money available? I don't understand this idea of constantly spending the money just because we came in over budget. And that there, when I was in business, if I was,
Well, this was ARPA money for the.
okay, and I'm getting to
general
that.
fund is what
That's where I'm going next. So when I was in business, if I had extra money come in, or I would create a specific account for that money, there would be an ARPA fund. And these projects would appear coming out of that. They wouldn't appear in our regular capital budget or our general budget. Those funds would come out from that part of the budget. So I guess now that I'm hearing his question, Commissioner Kiefer's question, I'm kind of questioning, okay, what else did we approve with those ARPA funds that might be in this budget?
Everything that's a capital expense that has ARPA funds has to be shown. And that goes back to some of the other presentations with the pie chart and where the federal funds, because it's a capital project. And if you look at those projects, there's a line item for federal grant. And that money is shown there. Because in some cases, the project may be 100% funded with ARPA. In other cases, it may have combination of funds, but it needs to show up in the capital improvement plan. I think Kelsey was looking at the shooting range. It's in there in the out years, so it's not currently funded in the current FY '23 budget. It's a proposed future.
It's in a future phase, that's correct. So, I mean, all that money's coming out, that money for that project is coming out of the ARPA funds, but since it will be a county project, that's why it ends up in the capital budget, right? Because we have revenue that comes in, and part of that revenue is the ARPA funds. And then it'll show it's being spent over here as part of the capital project, but it's not coming out of, it's not general fund money, it's coming out of the ARPA fund.
This is though why I asked the question on the, if we start getting, let's say we get 8 million back of the highway revenues. You know, yeah, it would be nice to do some extra projects, and maybe we can, but shouldn't we put some of that money in our general funds? With the ARPA money, I don't even know where you show that at. I don't know where that appears at. I don't know, where's that money at on our budget?
In the capital plan, it's part of the federal grant dollar amount. On the very last page of your agenda packet, I mean, we have $19.4 million in federal grants budgeted. The amount that's being attributed from ARPA to the capital plan is included in that 19 million. As far as what we're funding on the operating side, there was a FY22 budget adjustment done to the grant for things that are coming out of the operating budget.
And then an individual project sheet, when you get your book, each project will break down where the funding source is coming from.
My fear is we are inflating our budget for the last 2 years based on current income. And anyway, okay, thank you.
Well, it has to be shown somewhere, I think is the.
Well, no, I get that. I understand that.
How capital differs from operating is the capital budget fluctuates greatly year to year just based on what we're constructing or what projects are going on. So this particular budget may show an increase in 1 year, it may show a decrease in 1 year, depending on what we have moving forward.
So the shooting range, is that still out 3 years?
So it is currently, so the firing range currently starts seeing funding in FY26.
Okay.
And that is just the $500,000 of speed camera revenue that must be spent on a sheriff project. This is to build up funds towards that $17 million project.
Okay.
But actual construction of that, we're not looking at that within this 10-year plan.
All right, so I see Commissioner Kiefer's point of, you know, if we have a building that we don't necessarily need, can we bump that up? Which seems like maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're not, that's not what you're saying.
I look at, based on my conversations with citizens, county staff, the sheriff, his department, not to put him on the spot, but public safety. We just had a discussion on public safety with EMS staffing model. We've said public safety is a priority for us, and what would get more use based on what I'm told is a priority, I think the shooting range is a more needed project than another building at the Ag Center. I think we have a wonderful Ag Center. I love the facility. The museum that we have there, the Rural Heritage Museum, is just awesome. More people need to know about that and see that. But again, it's just based on priorities, and I know that's something that's needed in our community. We have the 50, give or take, acres, and we have that long-range plan of what it could look like, and I know funding, you know, as it comes in, as we have it, we're going to build out. This is a one-time funding that I think we could really boost our public safety training center facility, and I think, just in my opinion, I think that's more worthy of a project based on what I've been told is need in our community.
The only reason I bring that up, since you brought it up, was that I was informed by a couple people in public safety that it is now already going around that if we do any kind of tax cut, we're not going to see that shooting range. So if that shooting range wasn't due to be built anyway until 2027, why is stuff like that going around, and who is starting that kind of stuff?
Might be a topic for another day. I've never heard that rumor.
Yeah, it's the first
I
time
knew
heard
the
that.
shooting range was a long way out. But my
If we
way
don't
would
have
be
any
there
interest in
tomorrow.
a vote to switch that project, we need to move on. So somebody needs to make a motion to go, is it a motion to reconsider the ARPA funding?
I voted for the Ag Center. I'm
okay
I'm
with
good with
moving
that, but
forward with
I
that,
think
but if we
Wayne
have
brings up some good.
If we have reserve money, then let's move the shooting range in all the facilities, including the driver's course. Let's move it up. Let's take the surplus that we have and do it to public safety.
That's not what I'm suggesting
Yeah,
either.
but I'm
I
just throwing that out there too. If you want it done and moved up and it's a priority, that surplus would be money that we wouldn't have to borrow into the future either. So there's good points. But if there's no initiative to change the category, we need to move on.
I would support changing the category. It doesn't sound like there's the support for it, though. Maybe in the next meeting or two, could we have a discussion about the shooting range, what its cost might be? Is it something that could be built out in phases? Do we have to do it all at once? I don't think we can change our CIP projects. We do that all the time. So if there is support for it, but I wonder the public need, I don't believe, is another building at the Ag Center.
Let's put on
believe
the
the
agenda
public need is
discussion
public
for the
safety.
shooting range and the driving course and everything else that would supplement.
I mean, we can
public
talk
safety
about the
training
future
center.
phases of the Public Safety Training Center. I'm sure the Sheriff, you're gonna, I'm
Yeah.
sure you can assist us with that. So we can do that. Have a separate discussion about that and what the phases are and what the timing is now, and then commissioners can look at it and see if you want to make any changes.
And
Well,
what money
do
would
we
be
wanna squeeze
available to move
that-
some of those projects forward sooner rather than later?
Do you want us to try to put that together for next week or put it off till the following
can.
meeting?
Sooner the better, it sounds like. is what-
Soon as you can.
I think we need to be cognizant of her schedule and the workload that she has and what she can and get done, can and can't get done in a timely manner. I think it would be important for you to tell us what would be a comfortable date for you. And you don't have to tell us now.
Quite honestly, I think the 26th, since I'm getting the other stuff ready for next week, plus we're already almost to next week.
Do we not have bond rating meetings coming up that you prepare for?
Yes, on the
The
27th,
three major rating, when are they being held?
the 27th of
You
April.
have to prepare for them as well,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, just look at your schedule, your calendar.
Sure.
And be honest with yourself.
Sure.
As to when you can bring a presentation forward.
All right. Hearing no more questions, can we move forward to the general fund discussion? Kelsey, Kim, thank you very much.
Just on a side note, since we're on general discussion, fund discussion, it's my strong opinion that I think everybody keeps yelling about recession. We've already shown a $17.5 million surplus. It was $16 million. I got an email a couple weeks ago that we received another $1.5 million. I would strongly urge, and I think it would be wise, to put at least $10 million of that in a reserve, general reserve account. That's just my opinion. I think, and then that still leaves us with $7.5 million to do whether it's, I don't know how much a shooting
Yeah,
range.
that's not a bad idea, whatever amount. Putting the 3 million into the pension fund, putting money into the reserve account are all fiscal responsible things that help with our upcoming bond ratings. Am I correct?
Yes.
So they're not bad ideas, it's just how much we do. Because they evaluate our fiscal stability by doing that, correct?
Yes.
So that's a good topic. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourselves again and
All right, good afternoon again. I'm Kelsey Mace, Interim Chief Financial Officer.
Kim Edlin, Director of Budget and Finance.
And we're here bringing forth Draft 3 of the proposed general fund budget for FY23. The general fund budget total is still $266,715,390. Changes that were made since the last draft include the full funding for Commission on Aging. There was a reduction to the grant management fund appropriation based on additional grant monies received. And the largest change are increases to the election board budget based on the primary election being moved from June to July. That change alone is $455,000. These changes are balanced through the additional pension contribution. So at this point, I'm open to further comment or direction of what you want to see in the budget.
So, and let me just say something about the pension. So, as you know, we had $3 million in for the pension to put into the pension. Some of these additional expenses have come out of there. I mean, I would hope, and it would be my recommendation, that when we start talking about surplus and you know, whether you put some in reserves and some, that we try to fully fund that contribution to pension, because I think that's important for us to get to where we want to be. So that's not necessarily for today, but you can see that number's gone from 3 million down some, but I would just ask this board to consider that when we start talking about surplus, that we try to keep that at the $3 million level if we can.
I agree with you.
yeah, that's a good fiscal statement. Thank you.
I would just offer, you know, last year we did a tax cut. I've been for several months expressing a desire to see something else, and so I've been looking at the budgets and watching as record surpluses have been coming into the county, and I would think that we're going to see even more. We're only halfway through this year, and so as we recently seen down at the state level, we saw bipartisan participation given to this, or a bipartisan tax cut given to all the citizens of Washington County, or of the state of Maryland. If Democrats and Republicans can come together for a tax cut, you would think that 5 Republicans in Washington County could come together. And so with that said, I make the motion that we reduce our current property tax rate by 2 cents to go into effect for the tax year July 2022 to July of 2023. I am willing to put off any other tax cut discussion for another year, but as I've been going around the county, person after person, especially those up in age, tell me time and time again, it's why they move. It's why they move. And I would think that Republicans could come together, especially if we're headed into a recession or we are in a recession, that we can give a little bit of that money back to the people. And so I asked Kelsey to, again, send me an email of what that would look like, what it would cost. The cost of that would be about $1.5 million per penny that we give back to the citizens of Washington County. And so if we did a 2 cent reduction on property tax, that would amount to $3 million. That would amount to the $3 million that was shown in the slide presentation that we were going to use to beef up our pension program. And so on the pension program, I really think that, yeah, we do need to beef that up, but that could come out of any time we have reserves. We should consider that being a priority. And so I do make the motion that we reduce the property tax rate by 2 cents to go into effect 2022 to 2023.
Have a first, is there a second?
Can I comment?
You have to have a second to comment. All right.
I'll second for comment.
You have first and a second comment, please?
Kelsey, are those numbers accurate?
The amount changed per penny is accurate.
1.5 million.
As the budget is today, we no longer have the 3 million for pension. We're down to 2.6 million for pension because of these other increases.
That means
But-
there'd have to be an adjustment. There'd have to be an adjustment on general fund.
Yeah, that just means that the extra money set aside
Yeah.
is now at 2.6.
And-
We'd have to find other cuts or
And
reductions.
that includes, that's the property tax. But then there's a personal property tax that's part of that. Is that?
Well, that includes the
That includes
1.5,
yeah, well, that's
yes.
what I was just.
Yes.
Yeah, I
That's the
provided
1.5
both.
million, right, okay. So that's property tax, and it affects our personal property tax, and that's a smaller amount.
Right. It's a much smaller amount.
Yeah.
But the total of those two together is about 1.5.
So as Charlie had mentioned, and I'd like to verify these numbers too, income tax is over budget for the first half of the fiscal year by 17.5 million, is that correct?
The initial projection is at 16 million for the entire year.
Okay, what's the additional 1.5 million?
There was an additional distribution done recently for 1.5 million for some PTE, and that's pass-through entity returns that were filed late that we normally would have received in January. And the state decided instead of holding them until our reconciling distribution, that they were going to go ahead and distribute it now. So I don't know if the whole 1.5 million would be considered over the 16 million. I would have to go back and look and see where we're at budget to actual so far this year.
Is there anything that prevents us from taking what we currently are seeing as a surplus, and we're closing in on the end of the fiscal year, and taking any portion of fiscal year 22 surplus to date and applying towards pension?
Yes, we could. My reservation right now is I do not have a distribution at the 3.0. We won't receive that until May. Once we have that distribution, I will be much more comfortable in what our actual surplus is going to be, and then the board can decide on how they want to, or what they want to do with those funds.
But you feel confident we will have a considerable surplus?
I am confident, yes, that we'll have a considerable surplus. Whether it will be at the 16 million or more or less, I'm not confident at this time of what that number actually looks like.
But, okay, but considerable nonetheless.
Now, that surplus is based on a 3%?
So year-to-date so far, our distributions have been based on the 3.2% because the 3.0 did not go into effect until January 1st. Our first distribution based on first quarter withholdings doesn't come to the county until May.
So you're talking about income tax, you're talking about your projection for what our income tax is gonna be at the end of the year. So when she says 16 million, that's what you're talking about?
Yes.
But we haven't had a distribution for 3.0 yet,
Correct.
because it just went into effect on January 1, so.
And you'll have those numbers next month,
So that distribution comes out May 31st.
May 31st?
And so once we have that, and we know what that number is, then obviously it will be this board's decision on what to do with that money, including, some of the suggestions that have been made today and the one that I suggested about pension. So we can fund the pension if the board funds it out of there at any time.
So our pension funding, and when I was in last week and we had our meeting, John, I don't think that wasn't a topic I got to. How did your pension meeting go? Was it last Friday? And, or maybe 2 Fridays ago, you were to meet with our actuarials, maybe?
So that was our investment broker.
Okay.
To go over how the investments went for fourth quarter of '21.
What's our funding percentage?
Wow, you asked me too quick. The last I spoke to the actuary based on what has happened so far in this year, and now this isn't at the calculation that's done for financial statements through GASB 68, but the rough percentage I think was around, was it 77 that he said? I think was 77%. Now, first quarter investments I don't think are doing as well. So, that's going to fluctuate until they do the actual calculation. Tom will be coming to do a presentation on the valuation with both the investment committee and then later on the retirement committee for what his 21 valuation is going to be.
You sent me something yesterday, and you don't, something you got from Tom.
That was the list.
Sorry?
I said that was,
It was the Maryland County Survey of Funded Ratios.
Mhm.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, so that was based on what was reported on their financial statements. And that still has us at the 68% that was presented on our financial statements.
Can I also point out that not only are we seeing some, as the state and a lot of other counties are, record income, but if we were to do what we did last year and take into account vacant positions, we would have another $2 million surplus on our budget. So I talked to Kelsey this morning, and that's about where we'd be at, about $2 million if we took into account, like we did last year, vacant positions. And the school board does the same thing. I don't know why we don't do that on a consistent basis with our budget. We know we're going to have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off. Could you speak to that a little bit in terms of budgeting for vacancies? I thought that was something that we built into this year's budget.
It was.
Is there an additional $2 million in
So the
savings
$2
we're
million
likely
he's
to
referring
realize?
to is in FY '22. So far this year, we've calculated about $2 million of vacancy savings across all general fund departments. So far in the '23 budget, that has not been accounted for because I did not have a 5-member board consensus to do vacancy savings in the '23 budget. If that is the direction, the next part would be what departments are going to take the reduction for those savings.
So, in addition to the $17.5 million in additional income tax revenue the county received, our budget is going to reflect at least $2 million in salary savings?
If operating budgets don't go over. So,
And my point, sorry, out of respect to you,
I'm sorry.
and some may.
Some operating
I mean, I
budgets
can't
probably will
say for sure what expenses are going to be under at the end of this year because we're not there yet. Will these savings factor into that? Absolutely. But if other operating budgets go over, then those savings decrease.
and that's kind of what Kelsey told me, that, it depends on where you take them from. Now, in my mind, if we have 50 vacant positions at any time throughout the organization, then, I see what you're doing. You're trying to show them as being vacant. So
Right.
where do you put those?
Every budget's assigned a
But-
department, so it's what
Right.
department.
So what, in the end, I mean, to me, anyway, it really doesn't matter where they come from. If you have to ultimately move some around because they hired more and somebody else had less, on average, if we're showing a 55-person vacancy rate, and we show a 50% vacancy rate in the budget, I don't care who they are or where they come from, but it's still, I guess my point is, let's be conservative and say 1.5 million. It's still a 1.5 million that we could save off of our yearly budget to give back to the people. I'm going to say it again. The people deserve a tax break. The government should not be expanding at a rate of $60 million in 2 years. That's just my opinion. When we've only expanded by $6 million, and I know that we made some decisions last year that beefed up public safety. That's the priority of us all. But even with that beefing up, we gave an extra $17 million last year to our budget. And even with that beefing up, we still this year, so everybody got what they wanted, $17 million increase. Still this year, we're showing another surplus of $16 million, 17.5. I don't know why this is so hard. I don't know why.
Well, Charlie, let me interrupt. What's really hard is this just being sprung on us. I mean, I'm just hearing this for the first time. You want me to place a vote, and I'm all for cutting taxes. But I do want to be responsible, and I do want to have, I may have some questions.
I think we're getting there. I think we're
And I
getting
don't
there.
think today's the right day to just ask for a 2-cent decrease in taxes, which I could ultimately support. But I'd like to have some dialogue among the commissioners and staff before we just act on your request.
With all due respect to that comment.
Well, I'm just.
No, with all due respect, in a 4-year term, this group of commissioners will spend more than $1 billion of the taxpayers' money. When you add our 4 years' worth of budget.
All 5 of us.
All 5 of us, yeah, during a 4-year term. We spend $1 billion of the taxpayers' hard-earned money. And I'm a little disappointed if you feel this was sprung on you when we've been talking about our budget for weeks now, we all should have been doing our homework to the extent that Charlie has. I came in here last week so we can sit down and talk about the budget on a finer detail with the county administrator. We all should be doing our homework. So some of this is information that I didn't ask. My golly, I'm glad Charlie did. Some of this is information I knew because I've taken the time to research this myself. Quite honestly, I believe that if we did even a penny, we have it within our budget. And this is 2 years in a row where we've been able to provide a tax cut. We've been able to provide a salary increase for our staff. We've been able to provide a nice additional jump in salary for our police officers. In 2 years in a row, we've been able to do it with a tax cut. And let's be honest, we're not cutting taxes if we don't do anything because property values are increasing. Our citizens are paying more on their property taxes because their homes are worth more. I understand that, we want to brace for a recession, but I think our taxpayers want to brace for a recession too.
Yeah,
The cost of owning a home is unaffordable for many people, and even more so when property values increase, even more so when their tax bill increases, even more so during inflationary times. I think we could very easily do a 1 penny reduction, save our taxpayers $1.5 million. We can, all of these adjustments that we've made to our budget, we are able to move forward on for personnel requests, Commission on Aging, Election Board, and fund our pension out of this year's budget savings. And you heard our CFO say substantial. What was the word? What did we say? A substantial surplus. So we can fund our pension. We can take a tax cut for our taxpayers. It's numbers. Do the homework.
Yeah, Terry, in all fairness.
I agree with everything you just said.
Terry.
Point.
Hold on a minute, let Terry then.
Okay,
come back to
sorry.
Charlie.
The point that I'm making is it would be nice for us to be able to sit down and do more homework to be able to justify the 2 cent. And you just came back and you suggested 1 cent, which I agree with that also. I just felt like it was sprung on me today.
Terry,
Actually,
Terry,
it's sprung
Terry,
on
let
me
me
in the
be,
last 2
let me be fair. Wait a minute, let me be fair.
Yeah.
I tried reaching out to you twice.
That was a long time ago. And you
No, it was within the last 2
a
weeks.
while back, and you asked me,
it
you
was.
did discuss, or you did mention the property tax decrease as well as the income tax decrease. That's all you had mentioned. This is what
But
I
I've
would
reached out to you
consider.
since then, and nobody answered my call.
Gentlemen,
I don't recall that.
Listen,
I mean, I'm sure you
Terry,
called
I
me.
respect you, okay?
But
I
I don't
respect you.
appreciate you-
You are a man of integrity,
I'm
but
going to stop the conversation a second, please. Allow Kirk Downey to add a comment. Sorry to interrupt you, but he's been patiently waiting.
Well, I guess I just wanted to say, for the purpose of this discussion, I assume we are assuming that your motion is a direction to staff so that they can incorporate the appropriate assumptions into the
Yes.
budget. Because the actual tax rate is set after public hearing. There are certain legal processes that we have to go through. We have to have a hearing on the tax rate as well as the budget. And then the actual setting of the rate occurs with the adoption of the budget.
So really,
Yep,
the
I mean,
motion is to give them direction. Is that what you're saying?
Could we give staff direction to bring back a plan with a 2 cent property tax reduction
Then vote on it.
with an explanation in making that our budget balance with salary savings that we didn't budget for? I'm sorry, I thought we had a consensus last year to do the salary savings.
And it is in this year's budget, and I think Andrew mentioned it, because I've had some.
But it's not in
discussion with him about-
next year's budget.
It's not, because we weren't sure where to even to put it. Because what happened in the highways, we put it there, and then when we filled those positions, then their budget went up. And we were trying to figure out.
So if
how
we
to-
budget for salary savings, if we fund our additional pension out of our current fiscal year's significant surplus, then we can make a 2% property tax decrease work for our taxpayers.
Yeah, my question would be, which salary savings and how do we go to which department? Try to figure out who's a priority? How does that work? As a mechanic, not.
The majority of the salary savings in the past have been in detention and patrol, and I hesitate because we have done, or the board has done a lot to try to fill those vacancies through the new scale.
there,
And a lot of times, the detention, when there weren't full-time employees there and there were vacancies, we paid a lot of overtime because that still had to be filled.
And as far as I know, I don't recall you ever coming back. I've only been here a year. Okay, I haven't heard you say we went over budget. Okay. But your total payroll.
Because on the flip side, you don't have to pay the health insurance if, you know.
Right.
So there
And-
are savings there, but I don't know how the change in the wage scales, if that's gonna end up, I mean, our hope, I think, is that we retain employees and that we draw employees based on the changes that we made.
Here's my suggestion would be that you reach out to the Board of Education and ask their guy, how do you account for that? Because they do it. It's a part of their budget. And they don't seem to have a problem doing it. I mean, what I'm saying to Mr. Klein's comment is that it's an average. And so you're averaging out.
If you're
And so-
comparing us to the school board, they're at 109 million now. They go up every year. I don't know if they'd be the.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Klein, we're not-
I don't know how they do it. I mean, obviously, they have a whole category of teachers, which they move around all, you know, so they know how many vacant teacher positions they have. I would think they know that on a regular basis. It falls into one category, where we have different departments. So we have a lot of different departments and a lot of different categories. Now,
They did it last year. How'd Sarah do it?
We
She
put part
most
of it
in
in,
the highway department.
we put most of it in the highway, we put it in detention and patrol.
Okay,
So
but
why
did
did you-
anybody say he couldn't hire somebody? I mean, we never prevented you from hiring anybody, did we? I voted yes on everybody that came across our desk.
I think, how many open positions we have right now?
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask, how many
Yeah,
positions
and
do we have?
I think
Do we have any
we
idea?
went like 3 or 4 months not being able to get any drivers for highway. And
Come before us today.
so you have 6 open positions or 3 of them not necessary?
I think we always have
That's
open
what I'm
positions.
saying.
The county always
That's
has
all.
open positions, right? That's what we're talking about.
That's what
County has
I
open.
mean, so how do you determine which
There you go.
It may not-
To
it may not
defend,
just be
vacancy
highways,
don't
right?
you replace?
Because, I mean, you're always, I mean, people are coming and going, so you're always gonna have some open positions.
That's my point.
I get it.
So.
And I think that's a fair statement, John. We always have open positions, so don't target patrol detention, don't target a mechanic. We currently don't have a CFO, that's a higher level salary. We don't have an HR director, that's a
be
higher level
turnover
salary,
credit there.
where we recognize some savings.
Right.
Those
So
are
the
executive level positions.
So the question I would have is, how do we do that? If we don't put it in a specific department, how would we do that?
We have a general ops department in the general fund.
Yeah, but where would we take the budget from?
So, right, we'd have to show the savings. Well,
Right.
so we can,
I'd love to know how the school system does it. And so if they're listening, if somebody would like to reach out to us,
I can reach out to David.
okay, thank you.
General, we have first and second on
Well,
the.
to circle back this conversation, the other part of that is if you were to reduce that rate, what are we going to do with the differential? Because that plays into this.
Well, if we're in a
To the
recession,
towns.
Yes.
Right. So do we reduce that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
this would
you
be a
also-
2-cent cut across the board. Whatever they're getting, that's their rate, and that's what,
How did you factor it with your estimate?
Yeah, they're 12.5 cents, right, on the differential?
Did you include did you include that in the differential? Did you include the differential in the quote you gave Charlie?
Is that in that quote? Yes. Yes, it
so
flows
then
into
it wouldn't affect it.
No, but we would need to know rate-wise. Are you going to leave the differential the same, or are you going to adjust
I
it?
do not want to affect our local townships. Some of them are struggling as it is.
So, if we reduced property taxes, whether you live in county or in a municipality, we can reduce it by 2 cents at both levels, right?
If that's your direction.
Okay. And if we reduce a municipality, it's a county's tax rate, but you live in a municipality. If we reduce that by 2 cents, what does that do for the municipality?
That doesn't affect the municipality I think Todd's out there, the county treasurer.
You know, we have a whole lot of unanswered questions. I'm fine, you know, I just want to know, I want to see it. I want everybody to have their ducks in order, so I know what, everybody doesn't know what we're talking about.
Well,
We
Randy,
got
I'm
the
glad people
general
are getting the
basis.
conversation started.
Okay,
I'm glad people are getting that conversation started so we can save the taxpayers money.
Well, yeah,
I
I'm not
think we're
against that at all, but I want to hear the
agreement on that,
facts.
so-
We don't know.
Do you want them to come back with more information, or you want to vote on this now with all the questions?
I'm not voting
I'm
on with the questions.
I
I'm
think
okay with it coming back with all the ideas that you're saying. and
I
put it on
think the
agenda.
facts are, we've seen just in the first half of this year, a $17.5 million surplus.
my-
Even if we were
my-
conservative and say,
My main
I was gonna say,
comment
that's a
is,
projected over the entire year, that's not.
no, that's the first half. That's what we received in January or February. That's what
The
you told me.
1.5 million, the 16 million is a projection over the entire year, which we have not received all distributions for.
Okay, I sent you an email, and I said, what did we receive in January? Your response was 16 million,
my-
where we were at so far.
So can we come back with a new draft with budget for salary
Yes.
savings?
yeah,
And
this needs
then-
to be an agenda item so the public can know and watch and view the discussion. That would be my number one argument. I think we're all kind of in agreement. I see everybody bits and pieces of agreeing. I'd like to see this put on the agenda for the public knows and sees and watch.
And we'll come back with a new draft with budget savings for salaries. And then, was it a 2 cent?
Do a 2 cent,
Okay.
You
We can do a 1 cent and a 2 cent?
do both.
Yeah,
Do
do both so
one.
we have an option.
Yeah,
And 2
I would like
cent?
to know how much it saves the average household too. I'd like to see that.
Randy, right now, I'd be happy with an extra $10 in my pocket.
Yes, I'm sure. But,
I'm not as wealthy as you.
where's that coming from, buddy?
I'm just telling you, I'm not.
Okay, are those the only two changes, and then the balance would go through the
All right,
pension? Is that the direction?
Yeah, I mean,
We have a first and a second. Do you want to withdraw that motion, have them come back with a complete report, and it's on the agenda for the public to know about it and to watch? Because right now, no one was going to know that we were going to get this detail. I think you see a lot of people overlapping and agreeing with everything that's being said.
So you think you would agree with
I'm
the
not
2
saying I
cent?
want to see the numbers, that's my point. This is being, right here, I need to see the numbers, 2 cents, 1 cent, how the municipalities are affected. A lot of that, we don't have that in front of us.
I believe that based on the information I've gathered, I'm comfortable
I'm
moving
not.
forward today.
I'm not.
If you're not, that's fine.
I'm just asking you,
But I'm
just asking
I'm
you as
comfortable
your
moving together
commissioner, say,
today, or
let's
moving
come
on.
back with a full report for the public to,
So I'm comfortable moving forward today. I would hope that if the public was interested in our budget and they saw our general fund discussion, they could know that,
but
you know,
it
part of
wasn't
that is tax
specific
rate.
stated to what was
But
being
if you would
mentioned.
like to bring it back next week with the information staff will gather
Honored-
for us
we've
for more
honored
clarity
other
for you,
commissioners'
that's
request to
fine.
delay, okay?
That's fine.
Or to, I wouldn't say delay, but to bring back with more information on the budget. That's what I'm asking.
I'd be curious where
Commissioners,
people
okay.
stand right now.
I think it's irresponsible to vote when something wasn't on the agenda and nobody had a chance to listen in, send me emails. I think it's irresponsible. I'm not saying I'm against it at all. I want it on the agenda. I want a discussion. I don't care if it comes back next week or not.
Randy, I've been looking at this for 2 months. What have
Right
you
on.
been doing?
Okay.
Can I move to just table this until we get the information?
Let's make a motion, to table this as we're,
Well, do we have to move forward with the vote since there's a vote and discussion?
Mr. Downey, correct us on procedure.
You have to have a motion on whether you put it on the table. If you put it on.
Well, we already have a motion on the floor and we have a second. We've had our discussion, and so there needs to be a call for a vote.
Well, then somebody should call the question. Right now, he's made a motion to table. It's been seconded, I believe. That motion takes priority over the main motion.
Why would that take priority over the main motion? I mean, I've served on a lot of boards, and
Oh, what haven't you done? There's the lead attorney giving you an opinion.
no, I'm just saying, I've never heard it done that way. Usually you have to
There's the lead
finish with the
attorney
motion
gave
that's
you
on
an
the
opinion.
table.
Are you saying the motion to table overrides the other?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second to
It needs-
table.
You need to act on the motion to table. If the motion to table fails, then you continue
Move on.
debate on the main motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second to table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
3-2, motion's tabled. You have direction of all this different information, gladly to bring it back to us. Again, Mr. Baker mentioned about the courtesy of your schedule. We know how important meeting with the 3 bond agencies are in the preparation, so manage your time appropriately.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll just say this, I'll throw it out there for you to think about too. So we do have a meeting next week. There's not a meeting scheduled for the week of Easter week.
There you
So,
go.
but we could, I'll throw it out for you to consider, we could have a meeting that day.
Yes, it
Just to
is.
talk about these budgetary
Yeah,
issues.
one item, one major item, yeah, very
Okay,
good.
Randy won't be here that day, so, okay,
I'll be here any of Easter week.
okay, all right, so,
Yeah, let's just
So we
keep our
could-
schedule as.
okay, all right, we'll keep it the way it is.
All right, I think that ends our discussion. Motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go in closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.